Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello, and welcome to episode 109 of Mythos Busters. I'm Sean. Joining me tonight is not quite the full crew, but it's the working crew. It's the, I don't know what adjective I could use that wouldn't, leave someone out, so I'm going to rescind that immediately. It's an incomplete crew, but a crew that I'm very happy to be here with. It's Ian. Hey, Ian.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Welcome back, Sean.
I missed you guys.
I know.
I know we did do a stream that was fraught with various issues, but it was nice to see everyone again. But oh man, I have never, to my knowledge, missed 2 episodes of the podcast proper in a row. So I'm very glad that you guys were able to go on, but it was also painful personally for me to watch because, well, I guess I'm too much of an attention whore. Joining us tonight as well is Nick. Hey, Nick.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well.
Excellent.
I am also glad to have you back.
Woo!
It was really sad. The one that last episode was whatever. It's just someone's missing. Okay. But the interview with MJ was the one where I was like, oh man, that's one that it would have been great to have all of us here.
That was particularly painful to miss. Very exciting announcements. I have thoughts that I'll maybe pepper in as we talk about things tonight. But more than anything, I'm just sad that, okay, so this is the first developer interview that we were able to have post vaccines and post a lot of things, at least in Minnesota, opening back up. I assume it's the first one that, Maxine and Jeremy would have been okay to come over to my house and get to see them in person and sit in the same room, and it just changes the tenor of the interview. And I'm sad to have missed that. You guys did great. That was a fun interview to listen to. I understand now why people like to listen to Mythos Busters. You guys are pretty entertaining. Missing tonight is Scott. We've lost him to his really unfortunately hectic paramedic shifts in what did he say? Okay, so it's COVID, heat wave, opioid crisis schedule that he's got going on right now. So he's out doing real work. But we'll hopefully catch him on the next one. Oh boy, guys, I'm so glad to be back. We've got a fun show for you guys tonight. We have our normal segments. We got some news. We got some catch up. Scott and I have talked a little bit about the most recent FAQ drop. If you haven't seen that already, go check that out on FFG's website. And then, of course, and then our main topic. Wow, that's not even our main topic, guys. So here's the thing. I really enjoyed listening to the episodes I wasn't on. The developer interview was great. I edited the episode I wasn't on, which I think I'm going to make a habit of doing from now on because it was really fun to do that. But there was a distinct lack of, I think, enthusiasm for curse cards that was identified, both by us internally and by a fair few listeners who called it out. So tonight's discussion topic is going to be us talking about some curse builds that we've come up with and our thoughts on curses as we become more and more familiar with them. And of course, we'll round it out with some tentacle time. But before we get to any of that, just a couple quick reminders. Pride Month, of course, is now over. Our Pride merch, we are going to leave up on mythosmerch.com. With our cool rainbowy squiddy Pride logo for just a little bit longer, just to give everyone a last little chance. And remember that all the proceeds from that merch is going to go toward the Trans Lifeline. I think I'm saying that right. It's the Trans Lifeline charity.
Yep. Yes.
So we've gotten a really good response so far. We'd love to be able to write as big a, I was going to say write as big a check, but it's not like we're like Dick Clark coming to everyone's house with a giant check.
We're literally just a giant Mythosbusters checkbook.
That would be pretty awesome, though.
We'll be hitting a very, very big PayPal button. So hopefully that can be as big as possible. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, check out mythosmerch.com, where we were going to have those items up for a little bit longer yet. And then from there, I just kind of want to check in. Guys, what Arkham have you been playing lately? Ian, what you got going?
I haven't been playing a ton of Arkham this past couple weeks. Been busy with some other stuff, but I did finally get around to starting a campaign with Parallel Roland, because that's the newest hotness. I wanted to try him out. I also haven't played the Dream Eaters campaign in a while, so I'm starting to touch that again as we start creeping towards Iron Man. I want to make sure that I'm very familiar with Dream Eaters again. So anyway, I started Parallel Roland. I'm just going to do the Dream side with him, 4 scenarios, and just go through that. But I played one scenario so far. So I can never remember the opening scenario of the Dream side.
Along the Steps of Slumber.
Sure. Yeah. I know there's steps involved somewhere. So Roland did pretty well overall. Parallel Roland, that is. He kind of faltered a little bit towards the end through no fault of his own. But ultimately was successful. So yeah, it's fun so far. I'm playing with, let's see what directives I'm using. I'm using the Sanity Boost one, because I have a feeling Parallel Roland's always going to include the Sanity Boost one.
What, 5's not enough for you in Arkham Horror, the card game?
No, it's really not. I have the one that lets you play Insight, or...
I was like, wait, hang on, what directive did I miss? Entomologist Roland, here we go.
Yeah, now we need an investigator where you can play out insects.
No, we don't.
The one where you can play Insight or Tactics for fast, and then the last one is the +2 to certain tests when you're engaged. I think the one I'm getting the most mileage from actually is, well, obviously the Sanity, because that's just always on. But I'm getting a lot of mileage out of the Insight or Tactics being fast. That's really been useful so far. So a few fun ones I've found are Burning the Midnight Oils Insight, which is an investigate and you get resources.
Oh, nice.
Ooh,
so
that's a
all
good
of
fast one.
All of a sudden, it's a free investigate test and you get resources. Logical Reasoning, which is a card I like, but oftentimes, especially in solo, it's like, how am I going to find time to play this? And like, for example, I had Roland get hit with Frozen in Fear, and it's like, nope, fast logical reasoning, bye. So that's been great. Preposterous Sketches, turning that into fast. There's a few others. Scene of the Crime. I threw Active Desperation in there. So, yeah, I think that particular aspect of it has been really fun, and I'm enjoying that. And I am playing just a 4 scenario campaign, so I went ahead and squeezed his special scenario by the book in as scenario 2. I haven't finished it yet, but that's been pretty fun so far as well. It's a little remix of Midnight Mask.
What are your thoughts on Parallel Roland in general compared to regular Roland? You find him more engaging? Like regular Roland is a little bit basic, but also effective.
Yeah. In terms of power level, it's hard to compare. The original core Roland is just still so solid, like getting a clue for killing enemies. Like I remember even in the core set with a very limited card pool, getting some very good results in like Midnight Mass and Devour Below, which can be tough. So in terms of power level, I'm not sure. Core Roland might even take it over Parallel Roland, I think. But in terms of fun and engaging, Parallel Roland's like leaps ahead for me. Like, yeah,
I was about to say, who are you talking to? Like, is this Scott asking you this question? Like, are you vibing on this investigator? I don't care how good it is.
I am definitely vibing off of it. I think having that increased access to other cards that Roland usually can't use, combined with mixing and matching the directives, it just gives you a lot to play with, and gives you a different way of thinking about some of these cards. I do have handcuffs in there, but I haven't quite pulled off cuffing yet. but hopefully soon.
Well, it is not quite cuffing season yet, I suppose.
Isn't every season cuffing season?
Yeah.
It depends on who you're talking to.
I suppose so. Depends on what part of the world you're in. Nick, how about you?
So I finished my I finished my Circle Undone campaign. I think I talked about it last episode. I can't remember if I talked about it last episode or not, but
You did.
okay.
Can confirm.
So
I edited it.
finish that up, and then as is usual, when I take apart the investigators for one campaign, because now I have a deck box that's devoted just to my investigator decks as they're going through campaigns. So there's Achievement Hunter is in there, so I've got my Ashcan Pete deck in there. I've got my next campaign, which I also finished my Innsmouth campaign, which I talked about last episode as well. That went very poorly. So I'm starting another Innsmouth campaign. I have Return to the Dunwich Legacy queued up after that one. And then I was also going to go back to Dream Eaters at some point as well. So I have the investigators built for all three of those. But let's talk about Innsmouth, because that's the one that I played. I'm running... I chose two investigators, and then after I built their decks, I'm like, this wasn't a great pair, I don't think. Because I have Tony and Tommy. And I looked at their relatively low blue numbers, and I'm like, this is going to be tough in Innsmouth. But they beat Pit of Despair with flying colors, the two of them did, which was awesome, because every time an enemy came out, they just slaughtered it. And then they just had actions that weren't being taken by enemies to go around and get all the keys, and I got all the flashbacks in Pit of Despair, and they both resigned, so I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And then I did the Vanishing of Elina Harper, and the mission was failed.
How close were you?
I had 2 suspects and 3 hideouts left.
Okay, that's a rough go.
Yeah, it wasn't great. So I guessed, and I was wrong on both. So I was like, well, there's the game. And then immediately after, I played the next one, which is the big barricade. What's it? In Too Deep. And they made it out by the skin of their teeth on that one. I only got, I think, 2. No, I got 2 of the flashbacks. One of them's the Joe Sargent one that is kind of not an automatic one, but it's essentially an automatic one, you know?
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. And then the other one is the Black Key one I got because based on how the Vanishing went, the Black Key ended up spawning on the location that requires the Black Key.
On the jail? Yes!
Yeah! So
I've had that happen before, too, and then you, load up In Too Deep, it's like, oh, well, that's a freebie.
Yeah, I know! I was like, oh, okay, great. So they did better than expected. There's no trauma yet, which is nice. I'm really scared of getting mental trauma with these two because they're both rocking. I think they both have 5s. Maybe Tommy is
Correct.
a 6.
Tommy's an 8-6.
Yeah, he's a 6. So I mean, but 11 sanity between 2 of them in Innsmouth. That's not that great. But they're really fun. Tony's great. He's one of my favorite rogues. I think I love, especially Seeker Tony. Like he's a pretty solid solo investigator.
That was my next question, is you went Seeker for his off class?
Yeah, I had to go Seeker because I wanted to get reliable clue acquisition, and Tommy has tricks, but I wouldn't say that he's consistent in getting clues. Sure. Whereas Seeker Tony is amazing. And I'm running Sleight of Hand in him, obviously, and I have pulled the double, 38s? I can't remember what he has, but I've pulled his double guns twice so far in 3 scenarios, which was really cool because I've said that line where it says reaction, put the other one into play when you play this one. That's not what it says, but it says something like that. That's a trap because it gets you to be like, I'm gonna hang on to this until I get both. But
yep,
I did it twice and it felt good. So I do still think it encourages you to hold off on the gun rather than play it when you need it. But if you can get them both out, hey, that's, more power to you. But no, it's fun.
I mean, I agree. Like, if you're holding on to them, that's a trap. Especially, if you're struggling at all in the actual scenario. If you've got another weapon out and you can hold it off, that's fine. But yeah, if you're holding on to it, you should probably just play it. Get more bounties on there. You want bounties. Bounties are good.
Oh yeah. And I forget. It's been a week now since I played, so I forget what I've upgraded them into. I think Tony's rocking Luparas because that is my favorite rogue weapon is the Lupara.
It is definitely the most satisfying sleight of hand.
Yes. Oh my god. Yes, it's so good. And then I made my other campaigns that I have the decks built for, but I haven't started them yet. So Circle and Done was Daisy and Rita. My last Innsmouth one was Mateo and Mary, and they face planted. So now, gosh, I can't remember. So it must not be important because they're not even in play yet. So let's not even worry about it. What are you playing, Sean?
Me, I've got a couple things going. I went really hard on Arkham. God, it's been like a damn month since I talked about things. I have a 4-player campaign going through the waking side of Dream Eaters with my kiddo and then my sister and her fiance. I'm playing... the campaign itself is going pretty well, and it's good to be reminded on things, as Ian said, as we like get ever closer to having to think about Iron Man. Which is far fucking closer than we think it is, boys. Like, it sneaks up on us every year.
I thought you were going to say it's far away, and I was like, you better watch it.
I've been doing this too long. Up the spreadsheet soon.
Yep. It's going to sneak up on us before we realize it. But I've decked them out with really good decks. Like, we've got Nathaniel, and then we've got a tricked out, like, Jackie, and then our Kluver's Ursula, and, you know, like, bouncing around all the revealed locations is so super easy. So the team itself is really good. So I'm like, I want to play something kind of interesting and, like, wacky. So I'm playing Kluver Double Preston, which has been going actually remarkably well. If you can have a team that keeps just a little bit of heat off you and find your double somewhat early, like... I hate building a deck around exceptional cards, but it's a thing we do sometimes, and we just accept how sucky it feels when you don't find it. But when you find double somewhat early, being able to just like blast 8 resources and scoop 4 clues with an intel report, or a look what I found for 4. Like I iced a 4 health enemy with a simple favor, or small favor? What's the damage? Small favor, which is a card that I generally think is pretty terrible. But the fact that I could just sit there, get my resources, and then double when I feel like it, I just like straight up. I think I've polished off a Grey Weaver with a small favor, which is no small thing, it turns out. So having a really fun time with that campaign. Preston might be my favorite rogue. He might be. It's either it's him. Yeah, I know. I like the weird shit. I like the investigators who don't play like anyone else, and Preston is that.
You know what? Play 10 games of Expert Gathering with them, and then get back to me.
You'll never.
I absolutely understand your incredulity, Nick. I absolutely get it. It's either him, Winnie, or Safina. I'm not sure. I really like Winnie. Anyway, so that campaign's really fun. The other one that I'm playing right now is so much fun, but it is intrinsically tied to our discussion topic tonight. So I'm only going to be very light on it. I'm taking Cursed Daisy with Blessy Agnes. So it's a blurst combo through Innsmouth. And my goodness, it has been such a wild ride. They demolished Pit of Despair. Those level 0 decks performed way better than I expected them to. And then got our first trauma in Too Deep. Okay, well, anyway, I like here I'm trying to skirt around the details because it is so tied in with Bless and Curse, which is what we're going to talk about in a little bit. Anyway, having a really fun time with that campaign, and we'll talk about that in just a moment.
Cool. Real quick, before we move on, I just brushed up on what my other decks were. I just want to say, because I've just realized my other 4 decks all have Mystic.
Nice!
Because I have
Attaboy.
Agnes and Patrice, because I've never played Patrice yet, so I was like, I'll build a Patrice deck. And I paired her with Agnes, and I was like, that wasn't smart of me. They're both Survivor Mystic, whatever.
Pulling from the exact same card pool.
And then my other duo is Akachi and God, now I forgot. It's Akachi and someone else, and I think I might just run them through. No, I'm sorry. It's Patrice and Akachi and Agnes and Carolyn.
Okay, sure. I
think I might just run them through Dream Eaters and do one duo on the waking side and one duo on the dream side, But yeah, so I was like, oh yeah, Sean will like that because there's purple in every deck in that case.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I'm with Big Kahuna here in chat. I am envious that you get to play Patrice for the first time. Oh, to get to experience that anew. Are you enjoying it?
They haven't hit the table yet because I'm.
Oh, got it.
I'm gonna do all of Innsmouth first with Tommy Tony, and then move on to Dream Eaters. So,
Tommy Tony.
Yep.
Sounds like a '90s alt R&B band. Tommy Two-Tone. Fantastic. All right, perfect. So we're going to extend the weekly prompt this week. Do you guys remember what that was? I should have looked before now.
I just assumed that you always got it covered, so
okay. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. So I have not been less prepared for a recording than I was today. I came flying in from a friend's cabin at the lake. I am sitting here with dried lake water and like all my sweat. Like I feel gross. I am disgusting, but here I am recording. So we're going to just go ahead and open up the hotline this week to any random thoughts you guys have. And in particular, as we get into talking about curses in our discussion topic, would love to hear what you guys have to say, particularly as well, if you have any thoughts on the new FAQ that just dropped. Please call in to the Mythos Busters hotline. Give us your thoughts. We love to get other community perspectives. We have a pretty diverse bunch between the four of us. Using the word diverse in a very, very loose way. We have a diverse amount of perspective on the game. Let's go with that. But we love to hear from everyone else. So please call into the Mythos Busters hotline if you have thoughts. That is 203-493-6984. That's 203-493-MYTH. Or just go ahead and click the call button on our Facebook page. Ian, what patron news have we?
So first off, thanks to our board members. That's Chris B, Chris H, and Chris M, our conglomeration of Chris's. Morton, Jared, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Dave, Abilio, Jesse, Chad, and Robert. Thanks so much for your huge support of the podcast. And we've got a special shout out to a random patron this time around is to Parker Davidson. Thanks, Parker, for your support as well. Sean already mentioned our Pride merch on Mythos merch, so make sure you go check that out and the rest of our merch. And I think that's about it for our patron stuff this time around. We'll get some more things rolling out of HR next time around, but the offices have been a little quiet lately.
Yeah, everyone's on holiday.
Yep.
Perfect. Let's see here. Nick.
Yo!
Do we have any news?
We do. So, there was an article that was in this section, but then I replaced it with the article that just released today. I think it was today, because it covers what was originally here. So, FFG released an article, today, called A Summer of Horror, that talks about all of the cool things coming from Arkham Files games. And of the 6 things listed in this article, 4 of them are Arkham Horror the card game. I mean, there's nothing new, but like they talk about the Roland Banks parallel stuff. Yeah, that's been out for whatever we know about that. Talk about Edge of the Earth, saying pre-orders are open, which is really fun. And then they talk about the thing that our original article covered, which is the revised core set, which is exciting. Because this is something that I know, like, Lord of the Rings was talked about for a long time. Like, fans wanted to see, like, a revised core set, a second edition Lord of the Rings, essentially. And it's pretty cool that we're getting that with Arkham, where we're looking at revamped... like, the scenarios are all the same. But it seems like this is going to be taking the place of having to buy a second core set, essentially. It's the full experience for up to 4 players, all in a single box. So we don't have to worry about those. We'll probably still see those questions on Reddit and Board Game Geek for a while, but hopefully they'll filter themselves
The
out.
revised core will probably bring its own set of weird questions.
That's true too. Yeah.
But people will be able to find Lita, I goddamn hope. Like, if nothing else comes out of the revised core, there
better be a big arrow, like, this way to Lita.
Card 117 right here.
Yeah. It sounds like if you already own 2 copies of the core set, there probably isn't much reason to get this.
But what is the reason, Nick? What's the reason that's gonna ensnare all of the people who have that collector's gene?
Yeah, the one thing that's really that is getting some of us. I know Ian is already like ready to smash that pre-order button if he hasn't already.
Why you gotta call me out like that?
Is that this will feature alt art investigators. So the investigators, their stats, their game mechanics will all be the same, but they will have alternate art, new art. Some would say superior art. I wouldn't. I've seen some people say that they really like the new art better than the old art. I personally like the originals better. But it's still really cool to see
removing the
that.
Removing the value judgments from it. It is the same artist who did the art for all of the starter deck investigators, if I recall correctly.
Oh,
or at least
really?
most of them. Yeah, Alexander Karch.
Oh, is that who did? Okay.
I think so, right?
Interesting.
Am I talking straight out of my ass right now?
I don't. Let me open up the product and take a look. But no, it's okay. Yeah, Pax in chat is saying you're 100% correct. So that is cool. Like then now there's I guess if consistency is something that you look for, that's awesome. But again, it's also just cool that we have alt art investigators. That's something I'd like to see more of, not necessarily tied to a product that I otherwise don't need. You know what I mean? Like if I could just get the 5 investigators, that'd be awesome. Anyway,
I think what's interesting about, because we've gotten alt art in various games, like Lord of the Rings, we got alt art heroes, and in Arkham Horror we've got a couple different versions. But if you look at like some of the alt arts we've gone, they still kind of look like the same character. I think what's interesting about these alt arts in the revised core is they all look fairly different from their original portrayal, especially Roland and Agnes and Skids even. All of them really, they look pretty different. So it's almost like an alternate universe interpretation of what these characters are.
There was a Facebook comment, and I'm only repeating it because it made me laugh so hard. I do not mean to be throwing shade on this at all. But the Facebook comment was, local community theater does Arkham Horror, referring to the alt arts. Which, they're great art. Like, I just linked it in Discord. Uh-huh. These look beautiful, and
they're all fantastic cosplay.
Yeah, yeah, but that's just it. They just look slightly off. Like it looks like a different actor playing the same role.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where that feeling comes from.
And that is cool. Like that's still really cool. But
it's actually, I think, a testament to how connected we get to the characters. That all of a sudden you look at Agnes Baker's art, probably the investigator I'm most connected to out of the core. And first of all, I'm like, why is she also not looking at the camera?
Yes, that was that was.
She can never.
Why can't I see her eyes?
just show me Agnes's eyes for fuck's sake. I just want to know what color are they. That's all I want. But yeah, they are all just. I mean, they look different. They're done by a different artist, so it's a bit of a thing. Yes, Wendy does actually look like a child. She's very, very well coiffed for ostensibly a street urchin. But she does look like a child, which is good.
I like that she still has the burnt red bicycle helmet on. It's nice to see that.
Yep.
Auburn helmet.
Her true signature asset.
Nick, it's a hairmet.
Yeah, the hairmet, yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, the other thing that I thought was cool, and the one thing I don't think I'm gonna get a revised core. I don't think. But if something tempts me into it, it's the fact that the box itself will actually hold a bunch of cards.
Yes.
It might be enough for me to be like, okay, I want the Alt-Art Investigators, and I want a box that will just hold all of the shit that I'm playing right now in my current campaigns, because right now I'm hobbling that together.
Yeah, tell me you're a card gamer without telling me you're a card gamer. You get excited about boxes.
Yeah, what are the dimensions on that bitch?
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy it.
Does that hold sleeve or unsleeved? Yeah, that's the big question right there. But no,
European or American sleeves.
So if you're a fan of Arkham Files in general, which if you're listening to this, I'm sure you are, then this was an exciting article to see. There's also some board game stuff happening too, which is cool. But I honestly didn't pay any attention to that.
I think it's interesting they threw a lead investigator token in there. Because it kind of felt like something that it doesn't pass like it does in Lord of the Rings, the first player token, so it never felt as needed. But I don't know, it's interesting.
I think we always assumed that we'd need one. Like when the game was announced, remember, Ian, we were hopping around in Gen Con that year finding peripherals, and I was like, I need a lead investigator token.
Yeah.
Because every Arkham game has a lead investigator token, and this game will too.
Nope.
Womp, womp.
It should just be Wendy, a wig that looks like Wendy's hair. That's the investigator. Everyone has to take turns putting it on.
Everyone puts on the hairmet.
The hairmet.
God, so sweaty.
That's our next swag. That's our
hairnet,
next Mythos Buster swag.
Mythos Buster's hairnet.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay,
well, we'll
proceed.
have. I don't think we had a release date on the revised core, right? This is just like the first announcement, and it's
Correct.
in the making.
Yeah, it is in pre. You can pre-order it. That's all we know so far.
There it is. Perfect. Any other news?
I believe that was it. Oh,
aside from, we'll just use this as our segue here. We had our third, I want to say. This is right. This is FAQ number 3 since release of the game. Or is it 4?
Hang on.
Shit, Scott's not here. I should have asked him this in our segment.
Let me take a look. Hang on. I got it. Just wait. Wait, I said.
All right, I'm here.
This is number 4.
Okay, wonderful. So we had our 4th FAQ drop. I want to say the 3rd one since like the Taboo list was a thing, because I feel like the first FAQ dropped, like the rules nerds were into it. Sorry, I'm not targeting anyone.
It's okay. I don't know how many FAQs there are, but there are 4 Taboo related FAQs.
Oh, all right. Well,
that was because I just went on ArkhamDB and looked at the Taboo lists listed on there. So.
All right. Well, apparently okay. Well, anyway, we had a new FAQ drop. I'm just gonna stop committing to details that I'm super wrong on.
Just breeze right past that.
No, I'm wrong. I'll admit it. Moving on. So we had an FAQ drop. It had some pretty cool changes and some good clarifications that I think are worth talking over. So now we're going to have Scott walk us through that. So Scott.
Sean.
There's been an FAQ.
You know what that means? It's time for you to get fat.
Oh my god.
That's right.
The dolphin. The dolphin. All right.
Well, I mean, I had to pay homage to my roots of listening to Cardboard of the Rings when you guys had Caleb on.
Yes.
The Morgul dolphin, I believe it
the
was.
Morgul dolphin makes its final appearance. Fantastic. Yeah, that stinger is like a fine wine. It gets better with age. What's going on in the latest FAQ? I am going to play the listener surrogate here. I've done nothing but skim the article that previewed the FAQ. I'm such a millennial. I can't even be bothered. So help me out. What's going on here?
The video was more than 45 seconds long, so you skipped it. Yeah. So once again, and this happened with the last FAQ, the great Seeker nerfing of 2020.
The nerfing?
the nerfing. And I keep on saying Maxine. I'm not sure how much Jeremy's involved with this. I'm sure this is totally a combined effort, and they go through this. I guess I'm just reading the explanations of these in Maxine's voice.
Yeah.
But it very well could be both of them speaking together. Sure. Again, the article that came out, awesome explanation of what's going on with lots of detail. I know some other games you get an FAQ and they're like, hey, hope you like it. But, I mean, Maxine and Jeremy are just like, hey, here's paragraphs and paragraphs on our philosophy of FAQ, which I love. Love it. I encourage everyone to go read that. So, they explain the difference between erratas and taboos in the article. Erratas are to fix cards that don't work right or are legit broken and warp the game. There's, a couple cards that just, like, we'll get to it, but Guided by the Unseen was just literally broken in the way it was written. And so that's what erratas are meant to do. And they also try to do that in the most intuitive way possible, so that it's not something you have to have like a sheet beside you. The card
works like you think it should.
Yeah, exactly. And that's usually what erratas are, where it just makes sense. Like, I remember Lucky Dice getting an errata because everyone was playing it the way the errata said it should, but it wasn't quite written correctly on the card. So
yeah, that makes sense.
There are two sometimes just balance issues. So the first one, Wendy's Amulet, finally. So it's now after you play an event or discard an event from play. Looking at you, Premonition, Wendy. And Maxine mentions that directly in the article. So now instead of, Premonition being able to be out and then it going into your discard pile once and be on top, once you're done, you can immediately play it again. Anytime you play an event or discard an event from play, it will go at the bottom of Wendy's deck.
Yay!
So,
which again feels like as intended, right? Like he just didn't.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just like you just can't foresee some interactions because the game's complicated, and Maxine and Jeremy like to do really cool things. So it's not like Premonition Wendy was lighting up the meta and everyone was bringing it to the championship, and it was just a problem. But
and it's a cute deck. I played it once. I was like, oh yeah, this does a thing. And I don't know if it was as strong as I think a lot of people were, like, some people were like saying this ruins the game. I think it was very strong. I don't know if it broke, but
I mean, just being able to pass tests is one thing. It's the, like, infinite actions recursion that really breaks, because as soon as you have infinite actions, like, anyway.
And a lot of those cards got already wiped from the face of the planet, essentially.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So, Hungering Blade and Crystallizer of Dreams, that just clarified some text as an additional cost to play this card, what you have to do. It distinguishes play from put into play, and just a clarity on Dexter's Yaztaroth weakness.
Which is the replacement weakness, right?
I believe so.
So I assume that was changed to you cannot play nor put into play things?
Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. See, again, intuitive.
Yep. Yeah. There was some ambiguity with seeking answers. In the article, they explained that there
upgraded
were tons
one, right? Because literally no one's talking about level 0.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was some clarity issues on whether, because it's like you discover 2 clues from your location. People were wondering, is that I discovered 2 clues, or is that additional to the investigate? So was it 3 clues?
Oh.
Cleared up. It's 2 clues.
So it's instead of your normal success result.
Yeah. Discovered 2 clues. Maxine wrote that there's just been tons of rules questions submitted to the team, and this is just, they're putting in the FAQ because it was asked. It was frequently asked, and it was a question, so it got in the FAQ. Guided by the Unseen, we mentioned this on the last episode, but you could trigger your entire deck of research cards from this, because you would basically trigger Guided by the Unseen, look in the top 3, you don't find anything, you could reshuffle, trigger it again, look at the top 3, again, shuffle, and you would only spend the charge when you want to commit something. So you could essentially, infinite monkeys it and just do it until you find the card you want. So why not just pick up your deck and go find it instead of shuffling all the time? And you could trigger all your research cards in your whole deck.
Why wait for the monkeys to figure it out? Just go ahead, grab your typewriter, start on Hamlet.
And now it has been limited to limit once per test, which I thought it was going to get a heavier something. Like a lot of people were suspecting you spent the charge before the search or it was going to exhaust. Now it's just limit once per test, which...
I like that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people reading it, like, that's kind of how I read it the first time. I was like, oh yeah, I can do this once per test.
I mean, again, that's definitely my assumption for how it worked.
Mm-hmm. There's some errata to the Black Expanse, which is Act 3, a point of no return. You take the clues instead of putting them on the act. Putting them on the act just doesn't do anything. It's more just a clarity of a mechanism. Back into the depths, we talked about this. This was something that Maxine mentioned to us that was going to get fixed, where it's the first part of the into the maelstrom, and if you were doing really well, you would have a certain amount of keys at the start, and you would just auto advance. And now you can it's a may advance instead of just automatically get advanced.
It's important.
It is, yeah. So then you can, go find more keys. And spoiler alert, I realize it's the 8th scenario, but you're finding keys in Innsmouth.
And you probably want more. You want keys. You want all those keys. Yeah. Just go get keys.
They printed special tokens. I mean, it's got to be something, right? I know you're going to be happy about this. Norman got fixed.
Woo! I mean, he wasn't broken, but woo!
So he just got the other word added to him. So for dual class cards.
Great. Now I can take Enchanted Blade without eating up a spot.
That's exactly it, right? Like it can count as not one of his 5 level 0 mystic spells or mystic cards.
Guys, probably don't take Enchanted Blade in Norman though. Don't do it.
And again, this works intuitively. Like a lot of the way people felt the dual class cards worked, and that's clarified in the FAQ on how they work, as far as like what class they are. When you think of, like, let's say Zoe, the Dunwich Splash, and you take a dual class card like Enchanted Blade, for instance, and it's the level 01 and it's a Mystic one, well, it counts as both Guardian and Mystic. So does that count as a splash because it's a Mystic card? When you have other in the deck building thing, 5 other cards, you can count it as a Guardian card and not a Mystic card, essentially, is how it works. So Norman just basically got that clarified.
Love it. I suppose the more poignant one for Norman would have been the tome, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the one he might actually take that would have taken up a mystic slot. All right.
Yeah.
I rescind my snark.
Or Scroll of Secrets.
That's the one. That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like one that would actually work, right? And since he's so narrow on what he can take at level 0 with Mystic, this makes it
important.
A little bit easier. Yeah. That's a tight little bunch of cards you have to choose.
Retrofitting your level 0 cards for a Norman deck is a thing. It's probably the most toughest part of a Norman deck.
Yeah. I think the toughest part of piloting Norman is the building before you actually pilot him. Yeah. So there's a bunch of rules clarifications as well, and actual rules segments created. You cannot be at no location. So if any effect...
All right, hang on. Let's not use double negative slang here.
Okay.
You can't be at no location, man.
Can't be at no location. So if there was an effect that would move you from a location and you cannot, and there's nowhere for you to go, that movement or that effect is canceled.
Okay. Was there a specific instance that brought that up that you're aware of?
I'm just assuming Luke.
Okay. Yeah, okay. That's probably a pretty safe assumption for half these errata.
Like that, and it's like something along with like Lost in Time and Space or Essex or any of the other, there's a bunch of effects. I'm sure that there's something in there. I don't know the exact thing, but I'm sure Luke was the impetus to having this happen. Yeah. Hidden cards in your hand go to the encounter discard pile when eliminated. So there was some confusion because when a player is eliminated, their hand and their deck and everything is removed from the game.
Oh, damn. I've just been adding them to my deck. I've been doing it wrong.
My deck's like 45 cards big now. So, because the rule is if any card that's in play that's not in your play area, like if you have a shortcut in play, that stays in. Like attachments to locations or other other players' cards, those stay in play when you're gone. And if they ever do leave play, then they are like removed from the game. So there was some confusion just clarifying about hidden cards, because also hidden cards say they can't leave your hand except for the ability on them. That's part of the rules of hidden cards. And so this is just an additional thing saying one of the abilities is if you die, they go to the discard pile.
Okay.
For those Marvel Champion fans out there, just a little more clarification on the word "you." I know,
I barely pay attention to Marvel, but I know that's a point of contention.
Well, so Arkham always meant like you, the investigator, is your entire thing. It's your entire team, right? Even your allies is you. In Marvel, there was the ruling was like if it can be your actual hero card, it has to be. And like, what about events? Is that you doing the damage, or is it the events, stuff like that? But in Arkham, kind of just a clarification that you, when taking damage, includes your assets. So it's like if you are damaged by this, if you put it on Beat Cop, you as a entity with your tableau in front of you took damage, and that's how that's how the game wants you to think.
I have always wondered about that from the I think it's the Pit Viper that that brings that up, right? Because like, do I get poisoned if I put it on the ally? It kind of seems like the ally should be the one that's poisoned, right? But then again, I'm just assuming that everyone who takes Peter Sylvester is like open mouth kissing him off screen, so it's just gonna get spread. It's
I mean, who doesn't, right?
I mean, how could you not?
So that just got clarified. I think many players were playing this already, and I think Maxine had already answered this during the TFA times in a rule, like people sending in rules questions like, oh, do I get poisoned? So I think just throwing in the FAQ for clarity.
Sure.
Also clarified that Zoe gets a resource for each swarm enemy that engages her. Some people were
Did
just
we
wondering, like,
need clarification?
Well, because swarm enemies move as one and you evade them as one, some people thought, and
You
and
engage them
validly
as
so,
one. I mean, technically
Right.
you do engage them as one. It's just the
Yeah.
one is a group of things.
Yeah, and so just it was more just a clarification. Like this is how it's always worked. Like Zoe does get money for each swarm enemy, but it was a frequently asked question, right? So
Yeah, fair.
yeah. This next one, you can look at face down cards attached to cards you control.
Oh, okay.
So-
how about cards that aren't attached? Can you look at the face down sanity card in the Unspeakable Oath? I've always
No.
struggled with that. I've always
No.
struggled. Okay, I've
You
never
cannot.
looked at it. I
Yeah.
always wanted to.
So it's cards that you have, like with backpack. I think puts them face down.
But doesn't sorry to belabor the same point, but doesn't Unspeakable Oath say it becomes an asset that you control? It's not attached to
does.
anything though, so I guess I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Well, in all my pre-research, I didn't even think of that example, so I don't know.
When I think of like fighting the temptation to look at a face down card, that's my first thought is Unspeakable Oath.
There was a clarification as well. Ones that are attached to encounter cards, like swarm cards, you cannot unless
Ooh.
told otherwise.
Okay.
So anything that gets like attached to a location or like an open space card. So I wonder about the asset, the +2 sanity one in Carcosa, because it's kind of like a open space card because the game puts it there, but it's also an asset you control. So, yeah. And the
Well,
other
I
one
guess
is
bank that for the next FAQ. Maxine, we're waiting.
Yeah. The the Seeker card that you put 5 skills aside and your deck gets bigger by 5 cards and you get a skill each turn. That just came out. I forget the name.
Me too. Like normally I've got you, but the new cards I don't have the memory anchor for them yet.
Yeah. That one specifically says you cannot look at them, I believe. So
Sure. Okay.
yeah. So anyways, face down cards that are attached to assets you control, like backpack. I forget if stick to the plan is face down. But anyways, you can look at them.
Okay. Diana.
Yep, Diana, Safina.
Does Safina say face down?
I don't know. I've always
I'm
played
curious.
it face up, so I mean...
Did they elaborate at all on why face down is the order of the day when, like, say, Diana or Safina, why they can't just be face up and attached? Is it just to mitigate confusion as to whether they're in play or something?
They didn't. And I feel like that's something that needs to be clarified as well, because, goodness, I love how I can always describe a card fully, but never the name. Like, so the Guardian event that you put into play that has an upkeep cost of 2 resources, but you sacrifice it when you would take damage and it prevents all the damage.
It delay the inevitable.
Delay the inevitable. Thank you.
It's a Diana card. I know that one.
Yeah. Well, when that came out with Stick to the Plan, people were wondering, well, it's attached to Stick to the Plan and it's face up. So do I need to pay 2 to keep it in play attached to Stick to the Plan?
Sure.
And I remember somewhere, I think it's in Arkham DB, like an answer from Maxine, that no, you don't, because it's not attached where it should be.
Right. Okay.
So
that
like
makes
you
sense.
haven't played it, so it hasn't enacted its text yet, which is what causes the cost.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
we're going on to Taboo now. I think this is going to be the most interesting part. I mean, I enjoy all rules equally, so I am always excited about FAQs. But I think this is the bigger thing that people are clamoring for. And
Adjustments to the meta? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And again, big article explaining a lot of their ideas about just in general about Taboo and the goal of it, and like how they want to balance some cards, bolster some cards, weaken some other, but they don't want it to be too big as to become unwieldy. Like they don't want, 100 card Taboo list, because it has to be something that people can remember. And a lot of the changes that they want to do to these cards is change how they work in deck building, especially is one they're attracted to, like chaining something or forbidding it. So adding or taking away XP, or just you're not allowed to include it, because there's no thought once you're playing the game, right?
Right.
Like when Pennant of the Queen was at 3 XP, you just need to know that in between the games, but when you're playing, it's just in your deck. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's definitely a way of taking down the mental bandwidth of adjusting cards beyond what they're printed.
Exactly.
Which I appreciate, because I don't have a whole lot to spare.
Yeah. So Elusive got knocked back down to level 0, so it doesn't cost 2 XP anymore. And so now it only moves you 1 location. Still does the exact same thing. It's fast. It disengages you from all enemies. But you just move 1 location instead of teleporting across the map.
Okay.
The idea behind this was to kind of balance the teleporting cards. So Pendant being able to just, whisk you away, but it costs XP. And, you have to get it into play. And it's with the Segments of Onyx. Also, one of your favorite cards, Astral Travel, right? Like, this makes, like, Elusive... Because Elusive, I think, was better than Astral Travel. Like, if you're just comparing them equally...
As printed?
As printed.
Oh, yeah, no contest.
Right, okay. So, now Elusive is like, well, it only moves you 1, but Astral Travel can move you still across the map, but there's a risk to it.
Ooh,
and it costs an action, right? So, there's
I can
that
see
give and
myself
flow.
playing that Elusive.
Right.
Because it's still, like, the point of Elusive... Well, I mean... I think the intended point of Elusive is to be like, oh, enemies, bye!
Yeah.
And, that wasn't always how it got played.
No, and I think the strength of that card only got bigger as maps got bigger and the game progressed and everything like this, 100%. Right? Like, and how location play worked. Like, I remember when Carnival came out, and we looked at Elusive, and we're like, oh my god, it breaks Carnival. And then Open Gate came out, and then it's just like, well...
And then Loot came out, it's like, well, I guess the game is just permanently cracked now.
Yeah. So Elusive just got kind of, like, toned back a bit. It still does... But again, the Taboo, like, it's mutated, so the text is altered. It still is so close to what it did before. Like, the idea behind it, right? You just can't move across the map. You just move 1. That's something easy to remember.
Still fast, though, right?
Still fast. Like, the only thing is its distance is limited.
Okay.
So that's something really easy to
Perfectly
keep in mind.
reasonable.
Yep. The Springfield. Oh, boy. So, Did
they make it worth 0 XP? Because at that point, I might look at it.
No, so it had before been on the chained list. Oh, this is something too that they mentioned in the article. They wanted to stay away from both chaining and mutating something. Like it should only be in one category.
Okay.
Is the idea behind the
okay.
taboo. The Springfield had been brought down in XP to make it more wantable. What's the word I'm looking for?
Attractive.
There we go. Thank you. And
it was a valiant attempt.
It was
A
okay.
for effort.
Yep. And there was some token manipulation.
Never took it, but
yeah, it just wasn't worth what it was asking, I think. So basically, the Springfield got sniper power. It basically got what marksmanship or the telescopic sight does inherently. And they explain in the article that now telescopic sight and marksmanship allow the Springfield to now shoot 2 locations away. Because the Springfield has a range, basically those 2 cards are now extending the range of the weapon you're using. So the Springfield can now shoot 2 locations away if you have a sight or are using marksmanship, which is insane. You can reach out and touch somebody.
Wow. Okay, you know what? Respect.
Yep.
I'll be interested to see like how many weird ass bank shots through like eternity that are going to be made possible because of just how weird location connections can get in Arkham. Like I'm thinking Aeons. Shattered Aeons.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Like you can shoot through the Nexus from a pocket dimension through the Nexus into another pocket dimension and hit an enemy. Hell of a shot.
So one of the coolest examples I know of this currently that I want to try and the next time we do like a 4-player stream.
And of all the people I know, you have always been the most positive on sniper, like the idea of sniper things.
Yeah, I think it's super fun. The idea of, having someone who can stand one location away from and have everyone spread out a bit, but you can still reach out and touch somebody and help who needs helping, right? So, bringing up Luke again, because Luke always shows up when we talk about FAQs.
Yes, he does.
So let's say you have Mark, he has the Springfield, he has a telescopic sight on it. So now you can shoot 2 range away. Luke could pop open his gate box. He can go in there. Mark can't, obviously. But now, the gate box is connected to every location. So Mark can actually fire, if the whole map's revealed, because I believe the gate box is connected to every revealed location.
Correct.
So now, let's say the whole map's revealed. Luke pops into the Dream Gate. The Dream Gate is connected to every location in play. So that means...
Oh my lord.
Mark can shoot through the Dream Gate to any location in play. So this literally turns it into a portal gun.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Just play spotter for the sniper. That's awesome.
Yeah. Rangefinder Luke.
That respect. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love weird wacky things like that.
What's that movie with I forget her name, Angelina Jolie, where they bend the bullets?
Oh, Wanted.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that. Is what goes into my mind. Just, Luke, pop the box, and you just see Luke smash this button and duck, and just over his head.
Okay, this concept has to exist because Portal and Half-Life are adjacent fandoms. Someone has to have someone shooting an enemy through a portal. Yeah. It's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. Telescopic sight, basically, it loses the text. Attached asset cannot be used to attack enemies engaged with you, which is awesome. So, you can no scope people.
Baby.
Yeah. So that was a huge limitation, I think, on using telescopic sight. I mean, telescopic sight is, I think, for a very specific deck, and so it wasn't widely used. In the deck it was supposed to be in. It was
very specific because it essentially disabled the normal use of your weapon. But now that it doesn't, it might actually see, you might throw that into a deck to be okay, and now I'll have the option if I need it.
Yeah, you put on your 45 or your Colt and just
fun.
Yeah,
put it on the lightning gun.
Yeah, God, how can you telescopic sight lightning? Anyways.
I don't know. You'll have to ask Zeus.
The last bit here is a bunch of cards got the remove from game text on them. And there's 5 cards that got this. And these cards were, I think, all... Is contentious the right word?
Sure.
I know a few of them were. So we'll just kind of go over them.
A little controversial, at least.
The thing about Taboo is I know that they are trying to curtail the power level of some cards. Some of these cards that we're going to talk about with the remove from game, they're really powerful when you can loop them a bunch of times or
Sure.
repeatedly play them.
Sure.
If you're just some guy casually playing with a buddy who might be new or something, and you just play these maybe twice a game, I don't think that's game breaking. This is just for those, and they talk about Taboo, like it's not meant for the new players, it's for the experienced,
Munchkins, the fucking Munchkins. That's who it's for.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's for people like us, right? Like, who play a lot, who are adept at the game. Well, I don't know if I'd call myself adept, but...
I would never dare. All my shit's, like, recorded on YouTube. Yeah. Anyone could easily refute that argument.
But it's for us, right? Like,
Right.
We have every card in the game. We've played every scenario. We've played hundreds of games. This is just to cut off the top 5% from really breaking the game.
Sure.
So, Eucatastrophe was knocked down back to level 0, because I believe it was put up to 2 or 3 experience. I think it was 2. It is now, once you use it, remove Eucatastrophe from the game. This was absolutely busted in Yorick because of how it functioned. Basically, you fail a test, you play Eucatastrophe, it goes to your discard pile, it triggers an Elder Sign, or you treat the token like an Elder Sign, so you pass the test,
right back.
and then you pull it right back to your hand. So for 2 resources, as long as you have 2 resources, you just pay 2 resources and
Never
you
fail
pass
a
the
test.
Yeah. So you can see how, like, that one especially, I think, got what was coming to it.
Yeah. Got what it fucking deserved.
Pendant of the Queen got put back to 1 XP, so it's back to its normal. It's no longer
interesting.
chained. But now...
Oh, because it got the...
Yeah, if this card has no charges, remove from the game.
There it is.
So you can play like this in someone who has access, I think it's mostly Mystic. I think Seeker might have 1 or 2 cards that can put charges back on the pendant.
Yep.
And so if you, like, I mean, it's quite a strong card, and I think it can bend the games in ways it shouldn't. But the way it did that was if you had someone like Mandy who could get it out quickly and then keep on getting it out over and over, like 3 or 4 times before they loop their deck. Like, it was just obscene. So now you can still use it quite powerfully. And if you want to add charges, you can, but you got to work for it a little bit, which I think is completely fair.
Yeah, and you have to be able to access both upgraded Seeker and upgraded Mystics, which takes the list down to, like, what, 3-4 Investigators tops?
Yeah, something like that.
I guess
Yeah,
Enraptured exists at level 0, but I don't think anyone's including Enraptured just to hit a charge on Pendant to the Queen.
But they might now.
But they could.
Right? That's what the Taboo list does, right? Like, makes you take a look. 3 aces also got, you still pass and get 3 cards and 3 resources. And then it gets removed. Remove each committed copy of 3 aces from the game. Which, I don't know how... rogues have decent ways to get skills and reshuffle. And anyways, so it's a powerful effect. So they just removed it from game afterwards. Which I'm totally fine with.
Yeah.
I personally found I probably play it like max twice per game anyways.
Yeah, like you'd play it in a heavy draw deck or something that tutors skills. I mean, I guess, I don't know. Pendant of the Queen is one thing because it's got like a lot of stuff that just completely blocks you from having to deal with major game impediments like the Chaos Bag or like having to move through locations. 3 aces just gets you cards and resources. I don't know.
Well, you automatically succeed as well. But
I suppose on 1 test. Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
A Watchful Piece.
Shirt.
Yep. Shirt card. This one was super contentious too. I think right when it came out, people saw this. And so this one is, again, you play it and you remove it from the game. This is skip the encounter draw phase, which is just a huge part of what the game does to slow you down.
Yep.
And this is also in the class that
recurs
is
things.
the recursion class. So the ability to just say no deck, I'm in a 4-player game, I'm canceling all 4 encounter cards multiple times per game. That was a bit too much.
Yeah, well, and I still have yet to play this because I just don't think I've when I was playing a Survivor with Bless, this hadn't come out yet, and since then I just haven't played. But I know the conversation of Bless and Curse is ongoing, but boy, it is not hard to get 5 Bless tokens in the bag, especially if you're playing multiplayer and more than one person is bringing those tools. Like, that is not a hard cost to fulfill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Keep Faith, is it? Costs 2 is fast and puts 4 in the bag? Okay. It's not that difficult, so.
Nope.
The last one, this is one that I'm actually a little bit iffy on. So it's Hallow. Hallow is the one that removes 1 Doom from any card in play, which, I mean, we have Fortune or Fate in Survivor, which prevents a Doom being placed. But Hallow goes and finds that Doom that was placed. It's like literally reverse Ancient Evils.
Yeah.
And this got removed from game as well. However, my thing with this is, as an additional cost to play Hallow, return a total of 10 Bless tokens to the token pool from the Chaos bag or sealed on cards in play.
That's a lot harder.
I feel, and this is 3 XP, it's 3 cost, and you have to have 10 Bless in play. I feel like this one may have been able to get away with the been okay without the remove from game. I realize that people are like, oh yeah, putting 10 Bless into play is not hard. It's not easy though.
No.
You have to get to that point. It takes work, right? It's not like Catastrophe. That is just draw the card, have 2 resources at any time. Yeah, this one I'm iffy on. So I think though.
So here's my argument.
Yeah.
And I agree with everything you're saying. And I think this is maybe a little bit dependent on player count and how much everyone's coordinating. If you're hyper coordinating on Blurst as a group, someone else could be running Tides of Fate. Someone else could be running Heavy Curse. And they could have 7 curses in the bag. Someone plays a Watchful Peace, clears 5 of the Bless. If you can just get 3 Bless back in the bag, Tides of Fate, suddenly you're back at 10 Bless, and then you play this, and it's I could see it. I could see if you're hyper focused 3-4 player, you could play this probably too many times. But it's, I don't know, that is corner case. I agree. Yeah. I'm lukewarmest on this needing it of the whole group.
I think it was to bring it in line with the design philosophy of preventing Doom on the agenda, Fortune or Fate, right? Fortune or Fate gets exiled, Hallow now gets removed from game. It's not exile, so you don't have to repay for it, so you can keep it in your deck. But that idea, and a Watchful Peace, you're taking a key component of what the challenge of the game is, and you're just negating it.
Yeah.
And Hallow is powerful in that you can do it later. You know what I mean? Fortune or Fate, you have to have it when the Doom is going on. Hallow is just whenever.
Yep.
Done.
It's like preventing damage versus healing.
Yeah. That's the FAQ. I love this one, actually.
Yeah.
I messaged Maxine. I'm like, awesome taboo list. Absolutely love the rules that got clarified or changed and whatnot. I just think a really strong FAQ for the game. Great taboo lists. And yeah, I'm really happy. So as the rules guy, I get when a new FAQ comes out, that's almost more exciting to me than the next cycle being announced. So
yeah, I mean, I won't lie to you. Part of me was really, really hoping that the Necronomicon would get knocked back a few XP. But, you do what you can.
Yeah.
I was hoping that Maxine was like, all right, y'all stop talking about it. Shut up now. I'll give it back to you.
So I've got a question for you. Do you think Machete can come off the list?
I don't ever think Machete needed to be on the list. Bold but true. Okay, so I think the only reason Machete's on the list is that it took a while for there to be a good suite of level 0 damagers. Machete was probably, and also it reflects, I think, the solo bias that a lot of the community has, because a lot of people play this game in true solo. As someone who plays primarily multiplayer, most of the time two-handed, Machete was fine. Like it was very easy for the game to toss you an extra enemy, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh well, my math changes in a very unfortunate way now. I think it could come off, and the game would be just fine.
Yeah, I think I was surprised not to see it come off, although I think there is some hesitancy to take it off, which is fine.
Well, especially when not everyone can get a hold of all the cards right now. Like,
yeah,
in a world where supply issues are a non-issue and everyone can get access to those cards, fine. But when you're coming out of the core set and God knows what you're going to be able to get next, I get it.
Yeah. So I think I'd be okay with it coming off, but...
I mean, look, even in the decks where I could be taking it, I'm generally taking Enchanted Blade anyway, just because... I don't know. I like the extra +1 when you're pumping the damage. Right. And for the most part, it in the Investigators where I worry about it taking up the arcane slot, I just consider that it's an arcane slot, and then, the hand slots, whatever. And in the Investigators where you're worried about it taking up a hand slot, who gives a shit about the arcane slot? I don't know.
Yeah.
I just Machete's fine. Machete's fine. It just very much had the only good option or only best option itis syndrome.
Yes.
Osis for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing is added to the forbidden list, so sorry, Ian. Still just double or nothing. Your class is broken.
Yep.
All right, well, on with the rest of the show.
Woo! Thanks, Scott.
Oh. Damn it.
Yes. I love that we captured the indecision. Really cool FAQ. Guys, do you, like, Scott and I talked for 40 minutes. Do you have any particular thoughts on anything? I wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to talk about sniper builds.
It's nice that we finally see the Springfield on the taboo list. It's nice that card finally got addressed via the taboo list. Some people say that it was tabooed before. I would argue that it wasn't.
It wasn't a real taboo.
It wasn't, yeah. It was, because that was nothing. It did nothing. This, I think, will do something. Scott's been doing sniper builds already before this even came out, and now that this is out, I think he's even more excited. He asked me, like, am I interested in sniper builds? And I'm like, no, I kind of like the tank play more than the long-range stuff. But I do think it's really cool that the taboo list is working to make a home for the Springfield where we all kind of expected it to be already. So
it definitely makes sense for it to live there.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the Springfield. I was, willing to try to make it work before, but this is like the Springfield as I always thought it should be, like
right.
That I imagine in my head. Like, I remember first reading Springfield and being like, wait, this doesn't quite do what I thought I was going to do. So now it does, and I'm definitely looking forward to trying it out in multiplayer. I think overall thoughts, I'm sure listeners have just heard all the insightful things Scott and Sean have said.
Scott said, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay, sure, Scott. I think my overall take on it would just be that I really like the approach on this FAQ of focusing more on mutations and revising the text to be different rather than adding XP. Adding XP is a cool lever. Like, I think it still can be used, but I find often when XP gets added to a card, it just ceases to exist for me.
Yeah.
So I much rather have this, like they did with Elusive, where it's all of a sudden it's back to 0 XP, but they just kind of change the text so it's more reasonable for that cost. So I hope we keep going in that direction, because I like that. I like being able to play cards more than having them sit in my collection. Overall.
That is the hope, right?
Yeah.
That is the dream. I thought that it was really cool. Scott mentioned this, that Maxine and I think Jeremy, again, this is secondhand, I haven't read it, mentioned that they specifically want either to mutate or chain a card, not both. It's either card as printed with extra XP, or we're going to change a little bit. We're going to change how it works a little bit to dial it in. I don't know if it's as intended, or at least it's just with hindsight. But at least that I like for keeping things in my brain, the fact that they go one lane or the other with each card.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very, very excited for Elusive to start showing back up in my decks because now that it's not worth 2 XP, I think that even though you lose the teleport ability, you can still get one location away. It's fast. I think that's still a really good card. I'm going to play it again, probably.
I mean...
Yep. I've already thrown it back into a couple of decks for the first time in a long time.
See, that's wonderful. That's what Taboo's supposed to do, right?
I've been using it the whole time, but I also tend to not observe Taboo, so...
I was about to say, 4-2 XP?
No,
Look,
of course
okay,
not. I'm not...
so-
are you kidding? I'm not stupid.
Yeah, well... So here's the thing, is like, very much with Elusive, you threw XP on it, I'm just not using it. Very, very similarly, and Scott posed this question to me, so I will in turn pose it to you guys. What do you think about the fact that Machete is still on the Taboo list? Do you have any particular thoughts there?
I forget it exists. So saying that I don't observe the Taboo list, for some reason Machete is one that I have observed since it came out. I don't know why.
Well, that's because it was overplayed, and that's why it hit the Taboo list to begin with.
Yeah, I think it'd be fine as a level 0 weapon again. Like, I think it'd be fine. That's but here's the thing: if you want it to be a level 0 weapon again, then just use it as a level 0 weapon. Like, there's no experience pips on the card. You'll be fine. So that's me.
No, I won't, Nick.
Oh man,
you go through with whiteout and add them to the card, don't you?
we were doing upgrades for our 4-player campaign, and this might make some people cringe. But I was showing various upgrades to the other players, and they're all pretty casual. So I'm doing my best to like throw useful upgrades in front of them so that they can see it. And like she was like, "Oh, I want to get this card and this card, but I'm 2 XP short." I'm like, just fudge it. Just take the cards. Just take the cards you want to play, and we'll play them, and it'll be fun. We have one more scenario with this deck, so just take the cards. Like I get it. I get it.
Yeah, it was funny because when I was reading through the FAQ intro when they were talking about this approach of wanting to explore mutations more, in my head I was like, okay, here comes Machete. It's coming. It's on its way. But nope, it will remain forgotten. One day I will use it again.
The next time that Machete shows up on the Taboo list, it'll be 3 experience now.
Just as punishment. Yeah? You want to talk about Machete? Here you go. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I already talked about it with Scott. I think it's fine. I think it suffered from the fact that the early card pool didn't offer many interesting options aside from it, and that is literally its only sin.
Yeah, you're looking at Machete, 45, or Blackjack. So yeah, in that pool, of course it's going to look overpowered.
Yep.
Speaking of overpowered... Guys, let's talk about some cursed shit. Can we talk about some cursey shit?
Sure.
Okay, so, look, I have thoughts, and maybe this is better served to go in depth on this particular topic when we do maybe the retrospective for Innsmouth as a whole, which will be coming up on pretty soon here. I really, really, really like the way they handled Blessed and Cursed in Innsmouth. I think it's really cool that they actually... Since the mechanic itself had to be fleshed out just from a logistical perspective in the campaign where the components are included, it ended up getting a laser focus and it ended up getting really well fleshed out. You have cool level 0 options that point you in a few different directions. You've got a lot of different upgrade options. And the thing I really like most about Blessed and Cursed is that any given investigator has this different clutch of options to pull from. So if you say, I'm going to build a Blurst deck for X investigator, it's going to look very, very different depending on who you're choosing. And some have better options than others, and, like Lola can take literally everything, so, chalk one up for Lola. But I really, really like the idea of, okay, I'm going to try Blurst in Jackie, or I'm going to try Blurst in Tommy, and what does that look like? What can that look like? And you've got so many different ways to go with it. Okay, so that said, it's pretty easy to see with Blesses, like, oh, you're just making the bag better for yourself. And occasionally you get other benefits, but generally you're just making the bag better for yourself. Very easy to see how that's good and how that's useful. curses are a little bit harder to convince yourself are worth it. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Yeah.
I have tried a few different curse builds. I've got like 3 full campaigns with investigators that have used curse things. And I'm pretty confident in saying that, yeah, it's not necessarily for everyone. It's probably actually only for crazy people like me who are like, ooh, do you want to press your luck even more with the Chaos Bag? Is the Chaos Bag like not swingy enough for you? But even with the extra, I guess, baggage that comes with just playing with curse tokens in the bag,
Oh god.
I would argue that as long as you structure your deck to pull more benefit out of it than failing a couple tests is a detriment, that they're generally pretty good. I really, really want to be a champion for curse in this scenario, in this discussion. I should be more careful with my words. But you guys were actually the ones, right? You guys were actually the ones who came up with this topic. So was there a specific reason that you like? I don't know, like we've been a little bit on the negative side on curse on this podcast in general up to this point. But was there anything in specific that made you guys think like, oh, I want to really focus on cursed and see what that's about?
I think I was the one who suggested it, and I think it really came from our last episode where we were reviewing Light in the Fog cards. And I think all 3 of us who were on that particular episode, sans you, Sean, were when we were talking about the upgraded curse spell suite, which is Armageddon. I have Chaos, Shroud of Shadows, I believe. I think we're all kind of more on the negative side. Yeah. Not necessarily saying this card is terrible, but just like, is this really worth the payoff compared to other comparable spells? And so whenever I have that kind of feeling about any card, it just makes me want to explore it more to figure out whether I'm right or not. So I think that was kind of the genesis of this episode, like to dig into it more. I my own personal experience, and I'm also the kind of player, like, until I see it and experience it myself, it's hard for me to really believe and be like, is this actually good? Because my experience in Innsmouth was I tried Bless builds and they were just on fire, just smashed through things through a couple campaigns. And then I tried Curse and I was stalling. And then I tried a different Curse build and it was stalling, which could 100% be me. I just need to learn. But I think really the message, whether you think curses are strong or weak, whether you like them or not, I think everyone has to agree that it's just more tricky to use curses, like just the very nature. Like blesses are good for the bag, so no matter what you're doing with blesses, you're not hurting yourself. Whereas putting curses in the bag is objectively hurting yourself in some way. So it just requires more finesse because you got to figure out how to build your deck to work around that, either to mitigate it or leverage it or whatever you're going to do with it. Whereas Bless, like, you don't need to do anything if you don't want to. I mean, you don't need to counter Blesses. You shouldn't be anyway. Right. So it's just a different thing that you're doing with the deck.
Ian, I have to say I completely empathize with the fact that sometimes I have to stop myself and be like, okay, is this actually good or does it just amuse me? Nick, how about you? What's your experience with Curse so far? Theoretical or otherwise?
Totally theoretical. I haven't played much with Curse cards. I built a Rex deck that flirted with curses. I think I had Deep Knowledge, and I think I had one other curse card in there. I can't remember what it was. Oh, the Cryptic Grimoire. And I had those in a level 0 Rex deck when my wife and I sat down to play Innsmouth back when it first came out. But after 2 scenarios, I kind of reminded her, like, hey, you know, these curse cards are here. Like, yeah, it's a little scary, but it lets you do things without having to pay resources, or it lets you upgrade into cool stuff, that sort of thing. And she's like, yeah, I just don't want to do that. I just don't want to put those tokens in the bag. So we ended up upgrading out of it. That was the closest I came to playing with curses.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. I think it's Ian hit the nail on the head for me. I look at all the cards that have curse play and I'm like, yeah, that's some cool stuff. That's really cool. I still have to put a bunch of -2s in the bag and then hope that I get the cards to pull them out before I have to test. And that's where it just kind of falls apart for me. Also, I apologize. There's someone like 2 blocks away lighting off a bunch of fireworks right now, so I apologize if you guys can hear that in the background. But
how dare they? So close to Independence Day.
You know what? I am annoyed. Like, it can be Independence Day, that's fine, but it started a week ago, and I'm done with it.
Oh, yeah, one of those families, huh?
Yeah.
So you bring up a good point. Both of you brought up many good points, but I feel like the biggest piece to really discuss when you're talking about, okay, if I'm going to add curses to my deck, you could do the very simple thing where you're like, okay, I'm going to throw in Deep Knowledge, and I'm going to throw in Faustian Bargain, and that's it. And you could potentially call that curse play. I technically wouldn't, because those are very easy things to do. It's like, well, okay, drawing 3 cards for 1 action at the cost of a couple tests being a little bit down. That's fine.
Yeah, that's a curse splash.
It's so easy to throw those in. Honestly, I feel like I may never actually run Preposterous Sketches level 0 again, because Deep Knowledge exists. Like
I'm the same with Rogue. Like Faustian Bargain's like my default Rogue resource card these days.
Yeah, like I may never run Quiche in a deck that can take Faustian Bargain again, because it's like, well, not only can I get more, but as someone who plays primarily multiplayer, I can share it. And that's cool. Yeah, you could. But anyway, one of the biggest things to discuss when you're talking about legitimately leaning into curse is, how do you mitigate that negative impact on the chaos bag? So one of the things that I think just very, very easily does it is, I feel like curse works better in an investigator or investigator party where you've got a single big stat that you're buffing, and generally you're like 3, 4, maybe 5 up on most tests. So just like straight up -2's not going to do as much to you as it would if you were an investigator that's running a lot of your tests at like 1, 2 up.
Sure.
So like straight up running it in Daisy, for instance, just pulling a completely random investigator out of my ass here, running curse in Daisy is a much easier ask, because you're starting at 5 intellect. You've got a lot of ways to get to 6+. So even before you start to sprinkle in any other mitigation, just starting with that high stat is a pretty big boon, because a -2 means less to you on standard anyway. I can't speak to higher difficulties.
Sure.
Yeah, I think either that approach of being, well, like 3 different approaches, and they're not exclusive, you can mix them up, but it's like either you go really high up on the test, or you go testless, so you don't avoid the bag altogether, or you just have various ways of like countering it, whether it's a covenant or a certain skill that just, cancels the curse or turns it into a positive.
Yeah. So as we dive into the more, so we've covered all the very general, easy baseline ways that you can mitigate curse. So let's dive into maybe some of the more specific ways that a very specific deck might start to work on it. So we've each built a cursed deck to discuss tonight. Who wants to open? Who wants to go first?
I will. I'll set the bar nice and low.
I love the kid who goes first on presentation days, because he's the smartest one.
Once you see my deck list, you might want to retract that statement.
No, I mean, you just don't have to wait.
Oh,
just
that's
get it done.
True too. I actually, with school presentations, I always like to go last and then just blow everybody's socks off and just like deliver the best fucking presentation I could. But anyway, this isn't school presentation. This is me sharing my Cursed Norman Wonders What He's Doing in Life deck. So you talk about how curses kind of elicit a negative experience, or at least it implies a negative gaming experience.
It can.
Yeah, it can. I decided to lean heavy into the negativity by going with an investigator that I just straight up don't like. Originally, my thought was like, okay, Seekers have a lot of curse cards. I know that. They have a lot of curse cards. And Mystics have cards that can turn curses into good things. Seekers have some stuff too, but for the most part, Seekers they're using their curses as an alternate cost, whereas Mystics are using the curse tokens as like as a resource. You know what I mean? Am I making sense? Okay. So I thought, who can take Seeker and Mystic? Well, Daisy can, but I've made tons of Daisy decks. I've only made like one Norman deck. Let's make a Norman deck. Well, then I realized that there's only 2 Curse level 0 Seeker cards, and one of them, there's no point in him taking because he can't upgrade it. Cryptic Grimoire. So I was like, all right, I guess Deep Knowledge is the first card I'm adding to this deck, and that's it for the Seeker side of it. So what I've got going on here is kind of a mess of Norman. Deep Knowledge, Right of Equilibrium is in there, 2 of those. Obviously Favor of the Moon, Paradoxical Covenant. I really just looked for like, what plays with curses? Let's throw it in.
I really like, you've got Tempt Fate in here, which in general, if you're playing Blurse, is a good card, but particularly good in Norman, because if that pops on the top of your deck, you're just like, well, that's a freebie.
Exactly.
And you get another card on top of it. That's really good.
Mm-hmm. And it adds blesses it adds the curses to the bag, which are the ones that I'm going for. And then it also adds blesses to the bag, which is like, okay, cool. Yeah, let's do it. I'll take some blesses. And then I had this moment where I was like, do I run the curse spells? Do I run Armageddon? Do I run Shroud of Shadows? That sort of thing. And I didn't feel like there was enough in this deck adding curses to the bag to make those as reliable as I wanted them to be. And plus, you still have to draw the curses to get those spells to... It's not like you're sealing curses on them or anything like that. You have to draw them as part of the test. And I didn't like Norman's starting Will of 4, which is good, but I didn't... I think I wanted him to have a 5 will if I was going to go that route. So I went more with the ones that combine skill value. So we have double Sixth Sense in there, which is, Sixth Sense just amazing. And then I threw Empower Self in there as well, just in case I come to a point where I'm like something's calling for will and I want to use his 5 intellect for it. Sign Magic so that I can have 3 of them out at once. Since they're not running out of charges, I'm not going to be getting rid of them since I have Sixth Sense and Wither. So everything else that I'm talking about now is just what you would think, like basic Mystic, high-level Mystic stuff. So yeah, how bad is it? Because I feel like it's pretty terrible.
Who knows until you play it?
I'm not going to play it. That's the thing. Maybe I will.
Look, Norman's an odd duck to begin with. I feel like you picked possibly the hardest investigator to do this with. Very quite possibly the hardest investigator to do this with.
Sounds
because,
like me.
Look, here's a very, very normal thing that early Norman players do, where you see like, oh, he's a seeker, and then like in the back of your mind you process and he investigates, and he upgrades into Mystic cards, but like the front of your brain doesn't get that message, so you're doing things like including like the strange solution in Norman, which I have done. Like raising my hand, I am at the front of this group. Where it's like, oh, he doesn't upgrade into the things that I want him to based on the card pool. Because Mystic takes advantage of cursed cards, but upgraded Mystic cards don't actually add a whole lot of cursed tokens. So it can be a little hard to actually get them into the bag. So I think, if anything, that's just the hardest part of Norman in general, not necessarily this build, but it's just hard to pull them in to begin with.
Well, and also, like, I was looking at this for a moment because I forget what some of these cards do because I very rarely even look at the curse stuff. And I was reading Paradoxical Covenant, and I'm like, what? Like, okay, you have to reveal both a curse and a bless. but then it automatically succeeds. It's like, well, what is that going to happen in this deck? And then I was like, oh, that's right. That's why I put Rite of Equilibrium in there. Because Rite of Equilibrium, that's how you get the juice going in this deck. This is a 0 to 60 deck. Because if Rite of Equilibrium is on the top of your deck, you just play that, and you do the top action, and you add 10 and 10. Like, you just max out the bag. Like, that's literally what you do with this deck. That's step one. And then everything else is just kind of, like, trying to make up for that later, so.
I mean, that is a really impactful card. Like, you can completely fuck up the Chaos Bag in one action. It's really cool. Ian, thoughts?
Yeah, it's an interesting take on it. I
don't sugarcoat it.
Well, because I think what's most sticks out to me is because whenever I try to build a kind of mystic deck that works with curses, I immediately try to grab the spells that are gonna trigger off of those, like Armageddon and Eye of Chaos, which hasn't always been a good thing, because in those investigators that I've tried, I mentioned those have stalled out, and I just need to work on refining those more. But sometimes I think the problem, especially at earlier levels, is that I'll just speak for myself, that I got so caught up in trying to get those spells working that I kind of ignored the fundamentals, and I was spending all my time trying to get curses in the bag and trying to make those justify their existence instead of just trying to play the game, and trying to do what you need to do. And I think that's a potential trap of curse play sometimes, is like, obviously do it when it makes sense, but if it's causing you to ignore like the win, and again, especially at level 0, I think as you get more XP and more powerful cards, it's easier to get the curse setup going. But so anyway, that's a long way of saying that that's kind of what this build makes me think of, as like different ways of approaching the curse play than just running straight for that suite.
Yeah, like I said, I thought about it, and there was an earlier version of this deck where I had Armageddon and Eye of Chaos in there, but I was just like, God, there's just not enough. This is a 0, like I said, it's a 0 to 60 deck, because you'll fill the bag, but you have no idea how long that's going to last. And once you Rite of Equilibrium twice, and maybe that second one you don't do 10 and 10, maybe you're like, that was too much, I failed too many tests in a row, we're just going to do like 3 and 3 or whatever. I wasn't confident in being able to constantly replenishing those curses, other than just smacking the big red curse button twice in a game.
I do like the kind of some of the options, and I'm gonna get to this in some of my things, because I chose Olive for one of my decks as well. Olive, I think, like, if you're trying to find specific tokens, Olive is a great way to go.
Yeah, I love
such
Olive.
a great way to go. And between the fact that you, with Rite of Equilibrium, are also pumping the bag full of blesses. So here's the thing. All right, sorry, I should have actually started here. Despite the fact that I am like Mr. Purple, Paradoxical Covenant and its use really eludes me. I feel like probably someone smarter than me can figure it out and get it to work consistently. But I feel like, at least my experience so far, is that it is like, okay, well, when it happens, great. That's fun. But so anyway, just looking at your setup here, you're pumping the bag full of both blesses and curses. You're using Olive, and you've got Favor of the Moon. So you're sealing some curses. When you pull the blesses out, which are fun to add to the bag, but you don't really give a shit about, right? Then, assuming you have a Favor of the Moon out, you can bless into a curse, and then Paradoxical Covenant to just end it, which is cool. I like that.
Yeah, I definitely tried to get it to where I could set it up and use the Covenant, because that one, I think this one is, you're right, this one is one of the trickier ones to fire on, because it requires both in one test. Looking at this real quick, I think what I would probably end up doing is, like, I put the Crystalline Elder Sign in there because I was like, oh yeah, let's seal away one of those two, just because I don't need it if I'm running Paradoxical Covenant and my goal is to have that go off. But I think what I would probably do is remove one or both of those Crystalline Elder Signs and maybe look for some more level 0 token filtering or control. Like, I'm thinking Premonition throw some premonition in there, just so then I can at least know what I'm going into with a test, have an idea of what one of those tokens are. So, but I don't know, maybe not.
I mean, I have actually yet to put premonition in any builds where I'm doing bless and curse, because in theory, in my head, I'm like, all right, if I premonition and I pull a bless or a curse, I'm just me like, meh. It's like when you play premonition and you pull the cultist that says reveal another token. It's like, well, fuck.
Well, I mean, yes.
Now I've just raised the stakes.
But if you premonition into a bless token, there's still a measure of like, oh, okay, like sure. You know, like it's not a for sure thing. Whereas, if you premonition into a curse, then I could see that being like, oh fuck. So.
Yeah. But either way, it's not bad to know what you're into. And again, since you kind of have built for yourself a few different options, like if you premonition and you get a token that's, a bless or a curse, you could be like, all right, well, I'm going to olive on the next token.
Exactly.
Pull a bunch. If I find a curse, or if I find a bless that is paradoxical covenant, like, I feel like you have more options available to you than it would first seem when you look at this list.
Sure.
Because this isn't even a curse deck. This is a blurst deck, straight up.
You're right.
Like you're really looking at both here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a bad thing. Like I'm not saying that as a diss at all. It's like it's just this deck is really gearing on seeing both.
The assignment was go make a curse deck, and I came back with no,
you did a curse deck with bonus tokens, more tokens than you needed.
Curse plus.
All right, well, since my deck is actually kind of adjacent to yours, since we chose very, very similar investigators, I will share my cursed... it's actually a cursed Daisy deck, though I wrote Blurst here, because, as I mentioned earlier, I have this paired as a two-handed campaign. Let me share this here. So my first thought in making a cursed deck was, okay, I really, really like that Cryptic Grimoire, the Text of the Elder Guardian, the one where when you can spend 5 secrets from resolving curses, you can just skip an encounter card. That seems really cool. So I wanted to see how much I could do to dial that up and see how often I could get that to trigger. Turns out it's probably better in the hands of someone a little bit more skilled than I. It's, when I get the full kit out, it's like every other turn. I can skip an encounter card, which is pretty good, but it also takes me like half the game to get there, so your mileage may vary. But anyway, so that was the basis of this deck, is to use Daisy to grab that Cryptic Grimoire, which is actually kind of ironic in Daisy because it doesn't have a tome action, so her ability doesn't jive with it. It's just a tome that happens to work in Daisy. I have included Ariadne's Twine. So the idea is that this is actually a pretty lean Daisy deck, and it uses Milan as another resource generator. So the idea is that you're by mid to late game, if you've got most of your kit out, you're pretty flushed with resources. If you've got the Grimoire out, you can do Favor of the Moon. You're pounding through curses. You're paying extra resources to put them on Ariadne's Twine, and then use them from Ariadne's Twine on Cryptic Grimoire, and it works pretty well. It works pretty well. So the main things that I'm using in this deck to mitigate curses would be, first, let me, guys, talk to you about Fae. Have you played Fae in a curse deck yet?
No.
Okay.
Fae is also on my list, as we'll see soon.
Fantastic.
So yes, it's been my first experience with it, and I'm pleased with it.
So Fae is a skill, if you remember. It's got a willpower and 2 wild icons, so it's going in about the same slot that I would normally reserve for an unexpected courage in the old days, or an inquiring mind nowadays. So it's just kind of a wild card with some extra benefits. But if you reveal a curse token during that test, you get to return it to your hand, is the key piece. So once you find your first Fae, it's essentially going to negate the modifier from every curse token that you can pull. And you can pull them because you're playing Favor of the Moon in this deck. So obviously Favor of the Moon serves a couple purposes in this deck. First of all, like when you play it, it just gets curses out of the Chaos bag. That by itself, if you use it for nothing else, that's pretty cool. You can then obviously get curses. You can get a resource, which again goes back toward this deck being kind of lean and resource generating to feed those twines. It works pretty well. So if you can get the Favor of the Moon down and then Fey every single one of those curses that comes off that Favor of the Moon, you're taking that test as at net neutral. Yeah. And getting a resource, and getting a secret on Cryptic Grimoire, and triggering like whatever other curse token shit you plan to put in the deck. I didn't have a whole lot in there, but it's pretty good. So you add on top of that combo, where basically just Fey continues to recur every time you're using Favor of the Moon, Blasphemous Covenant, which is the covenant where you turn the modifier on a curse token to a +1 and then return it to the bag afterward so that it can feed your Cryptic Grimoire. Just between those things, the options that you have to just do shit just blows up. Like I said earlier, taking an Investigator in a cursed build that has a base 5 stat in what you want to do is by itself a really big boon, because you're already entering a lot of those tests way higher up. Well, not way higher up, but significantly higher up than you would be in an Investigator like Jenny, where you've got to stretch a little bit more for each test.
Oh, sure. Well, you feel the difference when you're building. If you're a 4 in your main stat versus a 5, like you make different choices 100%. In a deck build based on that. I find it interesting that, because when I saw this Cryptic Grimoire in here, my first thought was like, okay, how can I cheat as many secrets on this thing as fast as possible? And I'm surprised that, well, I shouldn't say I'm not surprised, because I guess I'm not, because you're going specifically curse build. But like I think of like Enraptured, Truth from Fiction, these cards that are just like, hey, throw secrets on an asset.
Both of those were in the level 0 build, definitely.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and I think the Eldritch, is the Sophist? The Eldritch Sophist? Does he work with the Sophist? Does he work with secrets and charges, or is it just charges?
It's both.
Okay.
Because the last Daisy deck I built ran the stones, the ancient whatever, I can't remember what they're called. Anyway,
the tablet.
Yeah, I didn't have to fill it. I didn't have to fill the level 0 with charges, because I had all these other cards that were just like, hey, throw charges on shit. And so like I got it out, and then in the course of 2 turns, by doing other things, I was able to fill it up and just translate it. So
yeah, and it's not a bad way to go. Very, very likely if you subbed a few cards out, that would be an avenue.
Right.
I really tried to go hard on relying on the twine. Was ultimately the focus of this build. Is keep it lean, make the resources available, so that way when you get the twines out, you can basically like just cheat to a turn onto the Grimoire, essentially. And then whatever other curses you draw, honestly, or through the Favor of the Moon, then you're also getting those. And like I said, once you get the full kit out, it's like about every other turn.
Sure.
That I'm skipping an encounter card.
So there's one card in here that stands out that I kind of go, oh, that's an interesting pick.
Uh-huh.
Tooth of Esli.
Aha.
Why that?
So here's the thing. So this actually gets back a little bit to my thing with Blasphemous Covenant. The way this works is that during the Mythos phase, obviously Daisy's going to nail any intellect test she gets, but more often than not, the ones you're going to be worried about during Mythos are going to be willpower or agility. So if you've got Favor of the Moon out, your Blasphemous Covenant, say you've got Favor of the Moon out, and you happen to have got a Fae in your hand, which again, Daisy drawing a lot of cards, it doesn't take that much effort to get those 2 cards like in action.
Right.
If you draw a nasty test during Mythos, you've got a few different options. You can just take it at like 2 up, pop Favor of the Moon, put Fae down. Like Tooth of Edsley helps with both willpower and agility. Or if it's a really, really bad test that you don't want to deal with, you can Blasphemous Covenant, use the curse token from Favor of the Moon and commit Fae, then suddenly that's like a +4 to your test, because you're ignoring the curse negative. So you're just blasting the hell out of this test. So what I found was that this Daisy, when she wanted to, was actually hitting agility tests during Mythos. So I'm like, well, you know what? A singleton Tooth of Edsley to just kind of keep the draw rolling doesn't seem like a bad idea.
Sure.
Didn't want to.
Sure.
Didn't want to see the second one.
Yeah.
But by the time I cycle through the deck and I see the first one, if I have the resources to throw it down, I have not regretted it.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually not the card I thought you were going to call out.
Oh, what were
I
you
was
thinking?
expecting someone to be like, what the actual fuck? 2 Quantum Flux?
Oh, no. Look at
That's
all
the one I was looking at.
that one made sense to me because look at all the card draw you have. Like,
Yeah.
Quantum Flux made sense to me because I was like, oh yeah, you're going to be cycling through your deck pretty quickly in this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and in particular, I like Quantum Flux in Daisy because her draw with Old Book of Lore, which I assume most people are using with Daisy because it's Daisy.
It's amazing.
With Old Book of Lore, your draw is mostly filtered.
Yeah.
So what you find when you're playing that type of Daisy deck is that you're drawing a lot of cards, but you're putting cards into your discard pile that you've used, that are like your deductions or your deep knowledges, or maybe a deny that saved you from something bad. Maybe you'll get a weakness in there when you just draw it, but for the most part, when I play this deck, I tend to get like 10 or so really key cards that I pulled very specifically out of my deck with Old Book of Lore and would really love to use a second or third time.
True.
So having a quantum flux, like the turn after you draw your Necronomicon, or like even when you're like, okay, well the Necronomicon's coming up, and I know it's coming up, why don't I just shuffle the rest of my deck, or the rest of my discard pile back into my deck? I find Quantum Flux to be a really good card in Daisy just because all of her draw is so filtered, and the discard pile that you're shuffling in is usually very high value.
Sure.
That's my argument for Quantum Flux. Maybe 2 of is excessive, but it's a wild icon, so no one's going to complain about that.
So is Tides of Fate in there as your abort button? Like, oh shit, this isn't working. Give me a turn.
So Tides of Fate is in there possibly for that. Like if you were just going to run this deck, modify it a little bit for solo or something, that would work fine. But Tides of Fate is in there because this deck is very specifically made to run alongside a mostly blessed Agnes deck. So the Agnes deck that I might as well just share that too, since it's technically part of this conversation. All right, so it's made to run alongside this Agnes deck. And so the Tides of Fate serves a couple purposes. It's an oh shit button, like you were talking about. In the level 0 deck, when you're still trying to translate the Cryptic Grimoire, it's a very good way to go from like 5 curses in the bag to like 10 curses in the bag. And then as well, when you really get to the end game and you want to push through, maybe I've got like 2 turns left and I don't really care about stacking up my Cryptic Grimoire, I just need to hit these key tests. It's been a really good way to just be like, okay, the bag's really good now.
Sure.
So that's why I've only got 1 in there. I would say I'm up to Light in the Fog, with this campaign, and I have played Tides of Fate 3 times, and each time I felt like, yeah, okay, that's where this card needs to exist. So I've actually been very, very pleased with it. It's a little weird, and there were the scenarios where it didn't really do anything at all, except for be a wild icon, but yeah. So anyway, that's my Daisy deck. This is the one that's mostly cursed, and then my Agnes deck builds in some other things. But so this is kind of what I'm getting to, is that Daisy in particular has some very interesting options for mitigating those curses. And I say Daisy in particular, but now that I'm looking at it, most of them are just Seekers, so I feel like a lot of Seekers could take these. But I feel like Daisy's filtered draw and just kind of her options on the Mystic side make it a little bit of an easier sell.
Yeah, I feel like the curse effects kind of come in 2 flavors, one of which is like, here's something cool for curses appearing, like Cryptic Grimoire is an example of that in this deck, and then the other flavor is like, here's a free good thing you can do, but you're going to pay for it with curses instead. Like Deep Knowledge and Faustian Bargain. So,
or Stirring Up Trouble.
Yeah, Stirring Up Trouble. When playing this deck, did you find like one or the other part of curse play was more prominent, or was it just It just all kind of worked intertwined.
So what I would say is that in the early game, I would say the effects that give you a bonus for taking curses are way more powerful because you don't have necessarily your board built. You know, you get up against that 4-shroud location, and you're like, I haven't found my Milan. I don't have anything really juicy to commit. But stirring up trouble, like, let's just get some curses in there and get this engine rolling, and I get these clues and I move on with my life. I feel like of the two, delineations that you outlined, the stuff that gives you curses for a benefit are way better in the early game, but I found myself maybe not playing Stirring Up Trouble once I have my kid out and Daisy can just investigate things,
Sure.
So it's a little bit of both. It just kind of depends when in the tempo it all hits. So I will talk very, very quickly, just because this is a combo about my Agnes deck that I shared. Because, despite the fact that this is, if you just look at the Agnes deck, it's like, oh, this deck is playing with Bless tokens, right? It's got Unrelenting, which is really in there just to be like a bigger draw, Unexpected Courage, because you're just going to plop Blesses on it and then draw 2 cards. I'm using Ancient Covenant, Favor of the Sun. I actually ended up not upgrading into Jessica Hyde. I think I stuck with Renfield. But my more important ally is Olive, because you just want to see those cards. And then later on, this Agnes build very specifically focuses mostly on enemy management. So Armageddon was the spell that I upgraded. And boy, let me tell you, and this is the main reason I wanted to bring this up is I just wanted to stan Armageddon right now. Yes. When you've got Daisy pumping curses into the bag, just like mad, like she doesn't care, because she doesn't. She's got so many ways herself to negate them. So when your Chaos bag is full of curses, you can Armageddon with Olive McBride, and do some really cool things. The fact that the Covenants can trigger for other players at your location makes so many cool options available when you pair these types of decks together. I've had so many situations where Daisy is using her Covenant for Agnes to make sure that Armageddon clears. And it's made it so much better. Like, Armageddon's pretty okay by itself, but drawing that curse token and being like, oh, okay, well, alright, I hope the next one's not a -3 or whatever, and you kind of do that spot math in the moment to see, where you're sitting. And if you have that option to be like, well, okay, well, instead of being -2, why don't I be +1? Like, it's... I've had a very good time with this campaign. I don't know if you can hear the gushing coming out of me.
Do you think that between Agnes with all this Bless play and Daisy with all that Curse play, that you could have done Paradoxical Covenant in Agnes instead of Ancient? Do you think that would have been reliable? Maybe?
I mean, well, let's not... maybe. I don't know if it would have been as reliable, because when you take Ancient Covenant with Favor of the Sun, and you throw down Favor of the Sun...
Oh, sure.
You basically now have 3 auto successes that you can just fire off whenever you feel like it.
Right, that's true.
And that's really powerful. Maybe. My answer is maybe. As I said earlier, I don't know how Paradoxical Covenant is supposed to work. Look, y'all, if anyone has figured out how to make that Covenant sing, hit me up. Call the hotline. Tell me I want to play that deck.
Well, let me direct you back to Cursed Norman wonders what he did with his life. And just the whole, hey, let's add 10 of each token in a single action.
Yeah.
Okay,
go ahead, Ian.
It's interesting because Armageddon, I've been shy about including it in Blurs because I'm like, if the bag has blesses and curses, am I going to see enough curses? But I guess that makes sense as if they're chaining and you got Olive along, that you can help kind of make that happen. The other thing I was wondering is because I know you're mostly a two-handed player, and I feel like everyone who's said they've had a really fun time with Curse has been like two-handed pairs.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if Curse is really like a 2+ player thing. Like, I'm sure someone's gonna stroll along now anytime and talk about a fun Curse solo build they have, but I just haven't seen it. Almost everyone has been talking about these cool, like, two-handed or two-player Curse builds, because I think that kind of synergy, like you're talking about, like using different covenants on each other, really takes it to another level, it seems like.
Turns out Curse is really good when you can make a mess of the Chaos Bag and have another investigator around to clean it all up.
I mean, yeah. Yes. Yes to both questions. I do think that Blurse in general works better with multiple. It works better with coordination, right? And if you've got a single deck, there's only so much coordination you can do. There's only so many options you can pull from.
Well, and it's not even. I'm sorry. I'm gonna play off that. I'm gonna take that and take it a step further and say it's not even that it works better with coordination. It's just that if you're in a multiplayer game and only one of you is playing Bless Curse, that is effectively making your deck worse because they're all taking tests and potentially stealing your ammunition. You know what I mean? So I think that, yeah, if you're doing multiplayer, then you have to go all in. We've kind of talked about that before, but okay, continue your thought. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just think that, particularly with the Covenants, there are a few other examples, I think, but particularly with the Covenants, the more options you add to reacting to those extra chaotic tokens you're adding to the bag, the more chances you have to be like, oh, this is the cool moment where we exhaust this covenant and then react with this card and then my Armageddon triggers, and like you just have more options and more opportunities to react and either mitigate or enhance or whatever it happens to be. So let me take a quick moment because I was not on the episode where y'all reviewed Spirit of Humanity. Or was I? I don't know. I might have reviewed Light in the Fog. I can't remember. But either way, Spirit of Humanity, if you are playing in a blurst team, if you're playing in a situation where you kind of want to see both tokens, it is an insanely good card to keep the bag filled with them. Because, here's my argument. Yes, it's good in Calvin. I'm using it here in Agnes to just proc horror in very much the same way that you might do with like Forbidden Knowledge in the past. Like you'll see, this is possibly my first Agnes deck that I've ever built that does not have Forbidden Knowledge.
I thought you had to. I thought it was their signature.
Sure.
It was in the level 0 build, but Spirit of Humanity crowded it out because Spirit of Humanity can essentially do the same thing. You're just getting a different benefit from it.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you're playing, if any investigator can take Spirit of Humanity and you care about Curse and Bless, all you do as that Spirit of Humanity player is you sit and rock it back and forth. You heal 1 damage and 1 horror one turn, and you take 1 damage and 1 horror the next turn, and you're just adding both flavors of tokens to the bag. And it's a net neutral effect to you. So all you do is you sit here and you swing your Spirit of Humanity around, and you're keeping the bag full of all these tokens that everyone else wants to play with. It is an insanely good card. And I don't think I've heard enough people talk about how really good it is if you care about Blurse.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most powerful, like, Curse, Blessed levers around. Because it's just repeatable in a way that a lot of them aren't.
Yeah, and because you have total control over it.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, the last thing I'll mention on this Agnes deck is Harmony Restored. I never thought I would find a place for this deck, but it turns out that just even pairing 2 investigators, one who kind of more cares about Bless, one who more cares about Curse, is really cool because I have pulled like I think 5 resources net off of this most times I've used it.
Sure.
And I just didn't expect that. It's a cool card.
This would be a great one. Oh, go ahead.
It replaced my quiches /
Oh, sure.
I don't think I ever actually had Uncage the Soul in here just because it doesn't have that many spells. But yeah, really good card.
Slam that. Once again, I mean, I don't know. Oh, yeah, Agnes can make this work. Smash that Right of Equilibrium button. Fill the bag up 10 and 10, and then Harmony Restored.
Oh, yeah.
And just
Hell yeah.
2 actions to get 10 resources.
It's 7 net, but it's fine. That's still really good.
Yeah. I mean, well, 2 actions though.
Yeah, well,
Turns out those are.
But you're shuffling a lot of tokens
You
around.
are, yeah.
Which is half the
You
fucking
have to
point of
put 'em
doing
all
all
in
of
the
this.
bag. You can't be like, well, I'm going to take them out. No. Put them in the bag. Finish the action.
Yep. Look, okay, so we're talking a lot about Bless and Curse, and we could probably talk for years about like the math and the feasibility. But I do think at the end of the day, you can't decide that you're going to play with Curse if you're not okay with the fact that you're going to fuck up a few tests.
Yeah.
And you also you can't play with these mechanics if you don't just come to terms with the fact that I love to just move tokens around. It's fun. It's a thing I like to do. All right, those are my 2 decks. Ian, what you got?
Speaking of moving tokens around, okay, so I did not do a yellow gator for my curse build. I did green. Shocker, I know.
Well, someone had to represent it.
Yeah. So I built a curse Trish. I've just been building so much Trish lately here at B. With a caveat similar to Nick that I think this deck needs a lot of testing and refinement. I tried it out once against Carnivale just to pick a random scenario, and I got crushed towards the end, but I think that's just more a factor of solo Carnivale.
Solo Carnivale, yeah.
I kept drawing I drew the -6 like 3 times in a row or something. It's ridiculous. It wasn't even curse tokens. It's a negative. Turns out -6 is a lot worse than a -2 curse.
Dude, that standalone bag is unnecessarily brutal.
It really is. I loved when I would draw curse into -6 and then you get a nice -8 going. I actually did love it because I'm like, I'm failing this test anyway. Buy curse token. Yeah, so this is a 40 XP deck. Double your trouble, double your fun. So I threw a few things in here. So I think the most fun thing you can do with this deck is if you get double down. But of course you can't count on it. We talked earlier in the episode about exceptional cards and how you can't always count it. But if you can get double down, then you can do some fun stuff like doing a double Reestrad, which is 0 cost. So just play it again. And all of a sudden, if you have space to add more curse tokens to the bag, you could be doing like 8 damage with a single action, essentially. You could double.
Double Reestrad was the name of my witchcraft Celtic band in high school.
There it is. You could double Faustian Bargain if you need a ton of resources or deep knowledge for cards. I have Gaze of Rakshash, however we decided that's pronounced. So this is a little bit of clue acquisition because, of course, Trish does that, but the curse leverage is really like in Reestrad and Gaze that you can pump out quite a bit of damage if you need to. This all, besides double, this has a couple of other exceptional cards. We got Eye of the Djinn and Lucky Penny both. So Lucky Penny is basically like a curse mitigation, potential curse mitigation in this deck where you have a chance of turning all these curses into a bless maybe. And Eye of the Djinn is really giving you a chance to start at a base skill of 5, which we talked about being high on tests is a good way to counter curses. But if a curse does come across, then hey, you get an additional action. And then you might notice the inclusion of Backpack 2. I like Backpack 2 if I'm running some one of items that I might not have a great chance of finding because searching top 12 is a lot. So that's basically
half your deck, man.
Yeah. So that's
half your deck at the beginning of the game.
That's basically my way of trying to counter having these exceptional cards in there. Unfortunately, double's not an item. I wish it were. Got Favor the Moon, of course, because sometimes you just want to be able to trigger the curses. Blasphemous Covenant for all the same reasons that Sean included it in Daisy. Let's see. I got some testless stuff here because I basically have a smattering of different mitigation strategies, like all 3 that I mentioned earlier. So to be high on tests, I went lockpicks. A lot of times in Trish, I like going magnifying glass because it's cheaper and it can kind of do the job. But since I want to be up so high, lockpicks is great to be super high on a test. Lola Santiago to go Teslas, because I mean she's the queen of Teslas and working a hunch, intel report, those kind of things. And then I do have our friend Faye, which was doing some work for me. Even in
Faye is Bae, by the way.
Yeah, you talk about Faye doing work in Daisy, who has a little bit higher starting willpower, but you think about what is one of Trish's major weaknesses is that 2 willpower, but all of a sudden you have 3 will icons. Like I passed a few willpower tests that Trish had no business passing thanks to Faye.
Dude, it's 3 willpower icons potentially turning to 4 if you Blasphemous Covenant off of Favor of the Moon. Trish is spiking willpower tests.
Yep. I did get Gaze going and pumping out damage with that. So Gaze and Riestrad combined it's a lot of damage. I think this is something, because I played it solo, I want to see this working in multiplayer, because I think in solo where I really started falling down is enemy management, because, you only have 2 copies of Gaze, 2 copies of Riestrad, and you have to kill a lot in Carnivale. So if I wasn't playing Carnivale, I think it would have done better. I think if I was playing with a second deck, it would do really well. Let's see if there's anything else I think those are the main things worth calling out. The rest is pretty standard Trish, but I like the bones of this because it's different. My first take on Cursed was really going like the Mystic. I was using Dexter and using those spells, which I need to go back and working on, but I wanted to do something different and staying away from Mystic and just exploring what Rogue and Seeker can do with curses together. I'm like, oh, they can actually do a lot. Like, once you combine all these cards, like, you're getting a bunch of very strong damage effects and resource generation and card draw without having to pay any resources for it, which means that you have more resources left for something like Lolo or anything else you need to pay for. So
also, it's Seeker Rogue is like the only combination that like wholly focuses on curse.
Right.
Yep.
Can we talk for a quick second about Lucky Penny? Because when we previewed that card when it was first revealed, it seemed fun, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, it's a thing that you might do. Completely blowing over the fact that if you are completely focused on curses, that what the effect of that card is that you can treat, ostensibly half of them like they aren't curses. Like, I don't know if anyone else skipped over that like I did, but if you are only ever going to see curse tokens and you're running Lucky Penny, it is only upside. It is... I just never really processed that properly.
Yeah, that's why when I was looking at what to include, I'm like, that's just a no-brainer. Like, like if you combine Blasphemous Covenant and Lucky Penny and things like Fae, like you're countering a lot of curse tokens potentially, or getting just being able to have a way of dealing like 2 out of 3 tests potentially, or maybe 3. So yeah, I think what I'm really curious about is, because I built this as the kind of the final form of this deck, is what like level 0 would look like and the progression, because all these cards work really well together, but figuring out how to create like a sane progression that would work well, like would you take double first? That's a big commitment. Would you take Lucky Penny? Would you take Eye first? Like, or would you focus in on the damage effects and just grab Riestrad and Gaze first? Like, or favor them. I'm just curious, like, it's quite a bit of XP 40 and like figuring out. And the thing with exceptional cards is they're really easy to include on standalone decks because you just spend them all at once. Yeah. In my experience, it's harder in campaign play when it's like, when am I going to get 8 XP to just drop on double at once? So I think it could work. Figuring out that progression would be really
Dream
interesting.
Eaters.
Yeah. Dream Eaters is a good
It's the only way to do it.
Dream Eaters or like halfway into Innsmouth. Innsmouth squeezes you for XP at the beginning and then just like squirts it on you halfway through.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Is that what Innsmouth does?
Yeah, that's the only way to describe that.
Yeah.
I love the universal revulsion at that metaphor.
It's the second one tonight.
Look, it's like a water gun squirt, just playful.
Yeah, because
I'm going to put down this particular shovel.
Squeeze and squirt, the Innsmouth experience.
Jesus Christ.
All right. Now I don't regret it. All right, so, I know Scott's not here, but, unanimously now, curses are good, right?
Yes. Yep. I think we solved curses.
Don't you do it, Ian.
I'll say this, I'm definitely more excited for curses than I was before, and isn't that what it's all about at the end of the day?
That's the best I could possibly ask. Fantastic. So, look, I have only scratched the surface. Like I said, I love Bless and Curse because every time you're like, all right, I'm going to try Blurse in X Investigator, you have an entirely different puzzle of both deck building, upgrading, and play set before you. And I am loving it so far. I've only got 6 investigators through it. So my next campaign is going to be Dark Priestess Diana and Dark Paladin Tommy, who are both blursing. And I am really, really excited because, again, Spirit of Humanity, generally a good card. I am so very excited to try Spirit of Humanity and Tommy because I feel like it's going to be bonkers. Anyway, so yeah. If you have thoughts or particular moments or deck builds that you'd like to share on that reflect how cool Curse is and help us convince everyone to give it a try, because I know it's probably pretty easy to be hesitant about it, please call into the Mythos Busters hotline and leave us your thoughts. That's 203-493-6984. But guys, let's take it into a little bit of tentacle time here. Nick, what's been grabbing you lately?
So a little bit of Arkham related stuff that I forgot to mention on the What Are You Playing? I set up to start the Dark Matter campaign created by Axolotl on Discord.
I've heard only good things.
I've heard phenomenal things about it. And I was like, a sci-fi follow-up to Carcosa? Yeah, let's do it. So I got it all set up, and I was ready to play it, and I was like, I don't want to play it solo. I want to play it with someone else.
Yeah, Nick, I accept.
I
accept your invitation.
And I think I want to stream it because it's good. It would be. We haven't really streamed we haven't really streamed any fan-made content.
True.
And that's one that is getting praise left and right, and I'm super excited to play. I'm so excited that I know I will. I want to get it printed so I have it physically, but it's a full campaign, so I want to try it first before I dive in and do that.
Sure, you want to taste.
Yeah. So yeah, I had it all set up, and I was just like, nope. This isn't how I want to play it. I want to play it with at least one of the Mythos Busters, if not as many of them as I can get, obviously. 4-player streaming's hard. I mean, we plan to do that anyway, and we still...
1,000 times, yes.
Yeah, but I figure 1 or 2 here and there, we can definitely do that. So yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun. But other than Arkham, what have I been doing lately? I'm not going to surprise anybody here. RPG stuff. Dungeons & Dragons, Rime of the Frostmaiden finished, but I'm still running another Rime of the Frostmaiden game for another group. We play every other week. We're not streaming that. It's fun. It's D&D.
Is that online?
Yeah, we play online, yeah.
Okay.
Next week, and that's the other thing, is I've been preparing for the reunion of our seasonal game weekend. So every 3 months, we used to have Sean and myself and some other of our IRL friends would get together for a full weekend of gaming, and we did that pretty consistently for a few years, but then COVID hit, and we haven't gotten together now in 14 months, which sucks. But next week is the resurgence of that now that we're all vaccinated. Laura and I are comfortable hosting again, so that'll be a lot of fun. So that's what I've been prepping for, that sort of stuff. And getting the house ready and my games ready and all that to have everybody over and playing again. Really excited for that. But that's, I'm a little sad to admit that I have not gone back to Mass Effect 2 after I encountered those. But I keep thinking about it. I'm like, God, I should play that again. But I encountered that one mission where I had like the same bug four saves and reloads in a row. Yeah, and it just killed my desire to keep playing. And
I could see that.
Yeah, and 2 was the one that I've played the most, so it's not like I'm going in to experience anything new.
Like that carrot you've eaten many times.
Yeah, so now I'm like, am I going to finish it? Like, did I buy the Legendary Edition? And now I'm just going to play all of 1 and half of 2, and that's it? But I'll get to it eventually. I just haven't done it recently. So.
I mean, I feel like... I'm only in 1 at this point, but I feel like the biggest reason to buy the Legendary Edition is to play slightly upgraded remastered 1. So, I would understand.
For me, it was...
2 is great.
For me, it was the ability to play through all 3 of them in one sitting, like back to back to back. Not one sitting, but back to back to back. Yeah, in one sitting, I'm going to sit in game for 80 hours.
And we will stream it.
Although
and watch Nick slowly descend into his insanity.
God, maybe for Extra Life this year, that would be fun to do. Mass Effect
each of those games is like 40 hours. Please don't. I love you.
Mass Effect 1 is shorter than you think it is. Like, at least it felt shorter. Like, the number of sessions I played through it, I was like, I was done quicker than I expected. But anyway, I forgot what my point was going to be. So, yeah, I haven't got back to Mass Effect yet, but I will eventually. That's it for me.
I have faith. Especially because, like, you're motivated now to play through all 3. And also I'm fairly certain, and maybe this is revealing too much, but whatever, like 6 people listen to Tentacle Time, so here we are. We actually have it on the books to do an extra recording, which is going to be one of those Mythos bonuses that we've been teasing for literal years. And I can't imagine that any candidate is higher on that list than Mass Effect for us, so,
I thought Batman was the first one, because we're all
the original for sure,
such big Batman fans.
Yep.
Gotta have Kip on for the Batman show. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. We actually should. Ian, how about you? What's been grabbing you?
A few things, but I think the main thing is I've fallen down a Spirit Island hole. I think the main reason, it's a game that people have talked about for a long time. I always hear very positive things about it, but I have a billion games, so just didn't get around to playing it. But it came out for phones finally. Like, there was a computer version and a tablet, but whenever something comes out for phone, then it's like... makes it instantly super accessible. So when I was on vacation, I'm like, okay, let me download this thing, and started playing it, and I was like, okay, I get why people are in love with this game. So I've been playing that. I got the tabletop version now, which is great. So yeah, anyone out there who wants to send me your best Spirit Island strategies, feel free, because I'm still feeling out the game. But yeah, it's a lot of fun co-op game, of course. I think it's interesting that I think one of the things about Spirit Island that I find interesting is because unlike a lot of co-op games that I see get a lot of love, like obviously Arkham and Marvel, which just kind of had this continual cycle of new scenarios, Spirit Island really... like the core, because the game does have scenarios, so I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, but like the core kind of gameplay cycle is the same each time. It's not like you're playing brand new missions, but they found ways.
It's a board game.
Yeah, it's a board game, but they found so many like there's so many different variations you can introduce, so you can decide what invaders you're going to play against, like England or Sweden, and that changes aspects of the game. You can choose different scenarios, which might affect the loss or win conditions. You can include there's like a bunch of different spirits you can play as. I forgot what the other toggle is that I'm not remembering. But basically there's like 4 or 5 toggles that you can just alter. So even though the core gameplay cycle is the same, there's just so many different ways to vary it. So that's kind of interesting. And now I see why that it's one of the few co-op board games that I've seen inspire the same kind of like strategy
fervor,
articles and devotion that like the LCGs do.
That's cool. I have only heard good things. I've had a few people mention it to me, and it seems interesting, so I might have to pick that up.
Yeah, the phone app is a quick and easy way into it, I think. The tutorial's pretty good.
Well, I mean, phones are great, but I do so love pushing cardboard at other cardboard in the real world, so...
Yeah, we share the same addiction, so I understand.
There's a reason we're doing a podcast about that.
we're like, what? You do?
I am aghast. So for my part, I've been doing a fair few things, but I think the thing I'll mention here is I have been playing a decent amount of Remnant from the Ashes, which is a Souls-like game. It was free on PlayStation Network a while back. I probably would have purchased it anyway because it was on my radar, but it just so happened that it was free to me at some point, so I downloaded it. It's very quickly described as Dark Souls with guns, but it's also a little bit more than that, because it's like Dark Souls with guns if the map was procedurally generated and like bosses had different variants. And like there's a lot of really cool things that Remnant is doing, and all of those mechanical things actually work within the context of the Remnant story, because it's all about like multiverses and variations and shit. You know, that's all really popular right now. But it translates into some pretty cool gameplay. So I've been plugging through that with Justin and a couple other friends.
Oh,
very
so
relevant. Yeah, it's co-op up to 3 players.
Oh, I have it, but I haven't booted it up yet.
Oh, dude, let's play it.
Okay.
Let's play Remnant.
Okay.
Yeah. Like if you get past the first level and just let me know, I'll just co-op with you whenever.
Cool.
But yeah, it's really fun. It's Souls-like. It's very Lovecrafty. It's Souls with guns, so it takes place in like a dystopian future where the apocalypse happened like in the 70s, 60s, 70s, somewhere around there. So technology is kind of frozen in that spot. I'm not giving away too many spoilers here, but obviously it deals with interdimensional travel and very eldritch things, so I think it's fairly relevant to the interests of anyone here. So if you haven't ever picked up a Souls game, but you like shooters, this might be your window in. The one thing I will say is that the production of it is not top-notch. It's a very small team.
Sure.
They've got some really cool ideas. They've got some cool designs. A lot of the art and character design is really cool, but the polish is not quite AAA. Mm-hmm. But you know, you can find this game for like $20 to $40 depending on what platform you're looking at it on. So anyway, Remnant from the Ashes, would recommend if anyone's into anything adjacent to Dark Souls. All right. Well, I think 2 hours and 40 minutes is probably a good place to cap this thing. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Please, 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 if you've made it this far and you have thoughts on literally anything Arkham, but in particular blesses and curses and all of those things, please call into the Mythos Busters hotline. We'd love to hear from you and play you on the next episode. 203-493-6984. We'll see you guys next time for 110. Bye!